Chapter 2149. No matter what, let's not care about anything else. First, we have to deal with the problem of the princess. I remember Dustless named her Nightblade god 10 fragrances, right? It's a good name, but it's a pity. Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott muttered to himself. His gaze was deep as he stared at the tall buildings in the distance. His calm gaze suddenly revealed a monstrous ambition. If possible, it's best to capture that dustless guy as well. Pfft. Hearing this, Irene spat out all the hot water she drank. Her expression was extremely awkward. What's the problem? Or did I say something wrong? Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott frowned and said in an unfriendly tone. His tone was very gloomy and cold. No. Realizing that she had lost her composure, Irene quickly apologized awkwardly. It's just that my stomach hasn't been feeling well recently. I'm feeling a little nauseous, is that so? After taking a deep look at Irene, Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott didn't bother to continue thinking about this issue. He just put his hands in his trouser pockets, and his gaze was incomparably distant. That clear gaze seemed to be able to hide from him. Phew, seeing that the shrewd and terrifying man in front of her was not acting strangely, Irene heaved a sigh of relief. Her current situation was like living with a king was like living with a tiger. She could not guess what Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott was thinking. Of course, there was also a unique pressure, the fear of a superior. The reason why she spat out the water just now was because Irene felt that Westcott's thoughts were too naive. Was Dustless someone that could be captured just because he wanted to? It was not that simple. To put it bluntly, when facing Dustless, Irene did not have the slightest confidence. Not to mention capturing Dustless alive, it would be a blessing from the heavens if she was not captured alive. Please don't ask me to deal with that damn pervert. Thinking of how terrifying Dustless was, Irene could not help but shiver. She could not help but pray in her heart. She really did not want to fight with Dustless. She was not a match for him at all. Or to put it bluntly, it was suicide. Irene. I have something for you to do. At the same time, Westcott suddenly turned around and stared at Irene. His gaze was so bright that it could melt a person. Don't tell me, he wants me to deal with Dustless. The corners of Irene's mouth twitched a few times, but she could only bite the bullet and say, Please speak, Your Excellency. I'll leave the task of dealing with Yedao Shintoxiang and Dustless to you. Don't disappoint me. Westcott said in a serious tone. His expression was meticulous and it was obvious that he wasn't joking. Finally, he instructed, Remember, you must capture the two of them. That's easy for you to say. One of them is an elf, and the other's strength is unfathomable. At the very least, he's stronger than the elves. Do you think I'm a god? As Westcott's subordinate, it was her duty to take care of Dustless and the elf. However, Dustless was too strong, so strong that she couldn't handle him. I'll do my best. Looking at Westcott's eyes, Irene sighed and could only grit her teeth and agree. Very well, I hope you succeed. Westcott revealed a gratified smile and gave her an encouraging look. Don't disappoint me, Irene. Irene fell silent and nodded. Since there was no way out, she could only walk this path to the end. Thinking of this, Irene's unfocused gaze gradually became firm. Even though she knew that Westcott was pushing her into a fire pit, Irene chose to carry out the task without hesitation. After all, this was the meaning of her existence. It was also time for her to show her worth. The sky gradually turned dark. Cold winds swept across the vast land. Tonight's night was especially bleak. Even the moon was very blurry, hiding in the clouds as if it was hiding from something. From the day until now, Toka and the rest had been mocking Toshiaki Kurumi. They were like fire and water, staring at each other whenever they met. However, Toshiaki Kurumi was indeed Toshiaki Kurumi. She was indeed different from the rest. She didn't fall into a disadvantageous position when facing off against the girls. If it weren't for Dustless suppressing her, they would have already started fighting. Bang! 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 The peaceful night was suddenly filled with the sound of things being smashed. It was extremely messy, and one could even hear the sound of shouting. It's already midnight. Are they still quarreling? Young people are really energetic. Dustless popped his head out from under the blanket and was speechless. Toshiaki and the rest could be considered to have set a record by quarreling for a few hours. Especially now, they didn't show any signs of stopping. Instead, they were getting more and more intense. It was truly admirable. Forget it. Let's go and persuade them. Dustless put on his slippers. It was the middle of the night, and he couldn't sleep because of their quarreling. Moreover, Toshiaki Kurumi's spiritual power was not sealed yet. It would be too late for regrets if she got angry and did something out of line. Was it an illusion? Suddenly, Dustless turned his head and stared at the dark window. The bright moonlight was clearly visible. In that instant, he felt an unfamiliar aura. Don't come over. Go away or I'll beat you to death. However, after a few seconds, the screams of the Night Blade God 10 fragrances resounded throughout the area. It wasn't an illusion. There really is an intruder. How bold. Dustless quickened his pace and quickly walked towards the room of the Saber God 10 fragrances. He had already guessed who this mysterious intruder was. Bang! He kicked open the door and a familiar figure came into view. Irene, it's really you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2150. Have I been discovered? Seeing Dustless's figure, Irene could not help but feel guilty and had a headache. The owner of the indifferent gaze in front of her was just too powerful. He was so powerful that she could not handle him. He was so powerful that he could kill her at any time without breaking a sweat. Dustless, save me. Beat this bad woman away. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance, who was restrained by Irene, hurriedly shouted. At this moment, she was only wearing simple pajamas. She was completely restrained by Irene and could not move. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance looked at Dustless pitifully. She felt very wronged. Let her go, Irene. Dustless looked at Irene indifferently. His tone was calm and there was no trace of anger. It was as if he was narrating an extremely ordinary matter. You. Watch your tone. Don't talk to me like you're my boss. Irene frowned slightly and looked at Dustless with a rather unhappy expression. His seemingly calm tone contained a sense of supremacy. To put it simply, it was an order to Irene. I'm sorry, I can't accept this. This is an order from above. I'm just carrying out my mission. If you don't want to be my enemy, then quickly disappear from my sight. Irene said expressionlessly. She pretended to be calm on the surface, but her heart was extremely bitter. She only wanted to take 10 fragrance away without anyone knowing. However, the latter violently resisted. Even if her power was sealed, the commotion caused was rather big. In the end, it still alarmed Dustless. Sigh, what a foolish woman. After staring at Irene for a while, Dustless suddenly sighed and asked, You clearly know that you are no match for me, yet you still dare to challenge me. The person who asked you to carry out the order is obviously pushing you into the fire pit. The most ridiculous thing is that a foolish woman like you still accepted this kind of mission. How foolish and ignorant. So what? There are some things that I don't have a choice in. Irene's eyes dimmed slightly. From a certain perspective, Wolcott was indirectly asking her to commit suicide. After all, challenging Dustless was equivalent to courting death. What a foolish woman. Seeing Irene's stubborn look, Dustless gently shook his head and said seriously, "Miss Irene, let go. You can't take 10 fragrances away." Really? Hearing this, Irene smiled confidently and suddenly locked Toka's throat. "Dustless, I know you're very powerful, but if you don't want this girl to die, then get out of my way. In other words, are you threatening me?" Narrowing his eyes, Dustless's eyes flickered with an ominous light. "Since you're threatening me, then don't blame me for being ruthless." So. As soon as he finished speaking, Silver's body suddenly disappeared, leaving only a dazzling flash. Despicable fellow. Seeing this, Irene's mouth twitched violently. Seeing that Dustless had disappeared and the entire room was left with a sky full of light, she immediately grabbed Night Sword God 10 fragrances and meticulously observed the changes in her surroundings. She looked behind her from time to time and looked to her left and right. Her suspicious look was rather comical. It was hard to imagine that this was the world's #1 magician. What ability is this? After carefully sensing for a while, Irene's expression changed drastically. She was sure that Dustless was in this room, but the strange thing was that other than the sky full of light, there was no one else who could see it. This was like the enemy was right in front of you, but you couldn't find him no matter how hard you tried. The world's #1 magician. Although your strength is weak, your intuition as a woman is praiseworthy. A faint ripple appeared in the void, followed by Dustless's cold voice. Just as Irene had guessed, Dustless was in this room at the moment, but Irene was helpless because she couldn't capture Dustless's physical body at all. Pretending to be mysterious, "Come out if you're a man," Irene shouted coldly, trying to anger Dustless. "You're definitely the most cowardly man I've ever seen, too useless." Hee. Unexpectedly, Dustless wasn't angry, instead he laughed strangely. "Seductive Beauty Jo also said this to me. She once asked me if I was a man, and my answer was, 'Do you need to personally experience whether I'm a man or not?' What about you now? Irene? You're shameless." Hearing this, Irene's face turned red. She didn't expect that Dustless, who usually looked like a refined and well-behaved person, would become the reincarnation of a pervert at this moment. The meaning behind his words was that he wanted Irene to use her body to prove whether Dustless was a man or not. "Although I've killed countless people, I still have a bottom line. Those who are obedient and tactful, I don't mind showing mercy to them, but if they're blindly ignorant, then don't blame me for being ruthless." The emptiness in the room flickered, followed by Dustless's voice. Could it be? Carefully looking at the floating light, Irene guessed. Could it be that these photons are Dustless? Damn it, how am I supposed to attack him? He doesn't even have a physical body. That Way Court fellow really sent me to my death. Although the enemy was close at hand, he didn't even have a physical body. How was she supposed to fight? "How about this, Irene? You rely on me, and I'll kill the man who instigated you to capture 10 fragrance, and from then on, you'll be mine," Dustless instigated with a smirk. "You know very well that Way Court is just a simple human. There's nothing special about him that's worth pursuing. If you rely on me, your future will be bright, and you'll be able to see a bigger world." Anyway, there was a lot of space in the system, and with Irene, Dustless could afford to raise her. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2151. Rely on you. Hearing this, a bright light flashed across Irene's eyes. It was as fast as lightning, disappearing in less than a second. She's really moved. I told you, as long as she has ambition, as long as she's ambitious, she'll be able to see how special I am. Relying on me is just a matter of benefits. Even though the light in Irene's eyes disappeared in an instant, Dustless saw it clearly. He immediately understood that Irene was moved. However, this was normal. After all, Waycourt was just a human. No matter how great his achievements were in the future, they were already fixed. On the other hand, Dustless had a mysterious background and was unrivaled in strength. Clearly, he had a better future. Secondly, Waycourt had sent Irene to challenge Dustless. She knew that she would be crushed, but she was still sent to her death. Irene's heart was already somewhat conflicted. That's right, rely on me. A fine bird chooses a fine tree to nest in. You can choose for yourself. Dustless's mouth was as sweet as honey. He enticingly said, "What Waycourt can give you, I can also give you. What he can't give you, I can also give you. Why should I believe you?" Although she was somewhat moved, Irene was still somewhat hesitant. Dustless wanted to gain something without risking anything. There was no way he could fool her with an empty promise. Why? Because of this. Dustless looked at Irene with disdain and clenched his fists. He raised his voice. Because I'm stronger than you, that's all. Nonsense. In the end, you're still trying to trick me into killing Waycourt. Irene coldly snorted. She grabbed Toka tightly and looked at Dustless as if she was facing a great enemy. Bad woman, Dustless has no reason to lie to you. Toka also took the opportunity to speak. He said seriously, Dustless was the one who took me in back then. He's very good to me. There's no reason to lie to you, nor is there a reason. Dustless had accompanied Yedao God Toka to go shopping, go on dates, go to the movies. Especially when he bought all kinds of delicious food for free. That's because you're too stupid and too naive. Don't treat everyone as a foodie like you. Irene looked at Toka disapprovingly. Dustless was able to conquer Toka with just food. This only meant that she was too naive and could eat too much. After wasting half a day of my time, you still don't understand. Dustless realized that Irene was still on guard against him. The gentleness on his face gradually disappeared. Since you don't listen to me, I can only use my strength to trample you. Swish. 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 As soon as he finished speaking, the sharp sound of something breaking through the air resounded through the entire house. In an instant, Nightblade God Toxiang seemed to have been invaded by the sun. The bright light was extremely dazzling. Countless rays of light converged and emitted a scorching light. So dazzling. Irene quickly closed her eyes. If she looked at the ball of light for one more second, her eyes would be blinded. The moment Irene closed her eyes, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of her. It directly pushed Irene's arm away and snatched Nightblade God Toka away. Damn it! Realizing that she was empty-handed and that Nightblade God Toka was suddenly snatched away by Dustless, Irene immediately lowered her head and cursed. She suddenly opened her eyes and endured the discomfort in her eyes. Her gaze was locked on Dustless, who was close at hand. In just a moment, the equipment of AST members appeared on her body. Her equipment was different from those of Liaozi Under the Sun, Tokichi Origami, and the others. She also held a sharp beam saber in her hand. A rare display device. Staring at the imposing Irene, who was glaring at him with hostility, Dustless smiled carelessly. But if you think that this kind of scrap metal can deal with me, it only shows that you're too naive. Scrap metal. Hearing this, Irene's little face darkened. She was hit hard by Dustless's words. The display device she used was very different from the display devices used by AST members. It was more powerful and designed in more areas. It was much more advanced than the display devices of Tokichi Origami and the others. But at this moment, it became the scrap metal in Dustless's mouth. This was naked slander and disdain. You'll regret this. Irene's little face changed dramatically. She held the beam saber in her hand and slashed horizontally. Her speed was extremely fast. In just a blink of an eye, the beam saber held by Irene hit Dustless's head. Poochie. Dustless's whole body was suddenly split into two. It was easily split into two by the beam saber. This disgusting ability again. Don't tell me there's no flaw. Witnessing Dustless being instantly killed, Irene wasn't happy at all. Dustless, who had been split in half, only turned into a sparkling photon. Then, he was perfectly restored to his original state. That hateful face was restored once again. You're too weak. Dustless said softly. His tone was very light, but when it fell on Irene's ears, it was as heavy as Mount Tai. He mocked her for being a frog at the bottom of a well. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In anger, Irene once again slashed the beam saber at Dustless. Clang clang. This time, Dustless obviously did not want to continue playing house with Irene. Seeing the beam saber coming at him, he calmly reached out and grabbed it. His big hand was hit by the beam saber and made a crisp roar. It was like hitting steel. Bright sparks flashed in an instant. Why is this guy's hand so hard? Ai Lian looked at Wu Qin in astonishment. She stared at his fair right hand which was holding the beam saber calmly. He was safe and sound. Nothing happened to him at all. Caw caw caw, Dustless exerted a little force. The beam saber in his hand suddenly had cracks visible to the naked eye on its surface. The cracks spread to the entire blade at an extremely fast speed. How strong is this damn pervert? He actually crushed my weapon with his bare hands. Irene looked at Dustless in a daze. Her gaze was as if she was looking at a monster. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2152. Irene was dumbfounded. Crushing her beam saber with pure strength, what kind of shocking strength was that? He was like a monster with unlimited potential. And the most shocking thing was that Dustless's calm expression did not change at all. On his cheeks, these words were clearly written, I didn't use my full strength. You think you're strong. Wu Qin laughed involuntarily when he saw Irene's disbelieving and astonished appearance, and he spoke words that struck Irene extremely hard. I might as well tell you directly. Among the enemies that I've fought, you absolutely belong to the weakest group of people. You. Don't be too arrogant. Irene's pretty face showed a hint of anger. She always felt that Dustless was ridiculing her. So what if you're strong? Why are you always so narrow-minded? Dustless looked straight at Irene. If he knew what she was thinking, he would definitely feel wronged. Speaking the truth, he would also be considered narrow-minded. It's not that easy to take me down. Irene looked at Dustless with a slightly smug look. A transparent pink light gradually appeared on the surface of her body. Following that, an emerald green protective cover suddenly covered Irene's body. She was isolated from the outside world and was in a special domain. Being wrapped in this mysterious protective cover, Irene felt more at ease. A faint smile bloomed on her face. At least before you break my domain of will, I will never admit defeat. Domain of will. Hearing that, Wu Qin took a closer look at the rain shield. After a long while, he said disdainfully, it's just a piece of broken paper. Why do they have to give it an elegant name, random field? It's really disgusting. It's just a piece of scrap paper that will break with a touch. Pretending to be cultured, vulgar to the extreme. You bastard, watch your words. Irene looked at Dustless in a frenzy. She almost fell down because of these words. A broken piece of paper defense. It was simply nonsense. Irene's phenomenon device was of a higher level than everyone in AST. There was no doubt that the so-called domain of will was stronger. Now that Dustless said that it was a broken piece of paper defense that would break with a touch, how could she not be angry? This stinky man really looked down on others. Why don't we make a bet? Irene looked deeply at Dustless and said in a deep voice, if you can defeat this random field, then I will be yours from now on. If you can't defeat my defense, then you and I, Nightblade God Toka, will have to leave with me. Ha! Hearing this, he was stunned at first. Then he looked at Irene with an idiotic expression and said disdainfully, silly girl, you think too highly of yourself. You think you can match up to the two of us? Could it be that you're the reincarnation of a deity? Are you that valuable? Irene was incomparably embarrassed. Only now did she abruptly recall the situation she was in. Right now, whether or not she could safely leave this place alive was already a problem, let alone negotiate with Dustless here. But I promise you. Anyway, the end result will be the same. Let's not waste any more time. After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly agreed to Irene's condition. Anyway, you will lose everything. From now on, you will be my servant, Miss Irene. Oh, no, I should change the name, Servant of Irene, you. Stop talking nonsense. Since you've agreed to the bet, then do it. The corner of Irene's mouth twitched violently. Dustless's words were always so harsh and unpleasant to the ear. This guy's ability to escape with his mouth seemed to be stronger than his strength. Bang! Who would have thought that the moment Irene's voice fell, a silent explosion came from the random field, followed by a caw-caw-caw sound that spread out. How is this possible? Hearing this crisp shattering sound, Irene's heart was filled with a huge sense of unease. She suddenly raised her head and saw that the seemingly sturdy Irene's random field had a crack the size of a finger on it. What kind of joke is this? It looks like a weak punch, how could it break the random field? Just how strong was this force? Could it be that Godzilla in the anime is disguised as a human? Irene covered her cherry blossom mouth with both hands, the shock on her face difficult to conceal. Dustless's move was not the slightest bit flashy, it was just an extremely simple punch. But the strange thing was that the supposedly invincible random field collapsed in an instant. It should be understood that even if the random field of the AST member's display device was the random field, it was impossible for the elephant to break it with a punch. Not to mention the complexity of Irene's set of equipment, it was far beyond the display device used by the AST members. It was simply not on the same level. But the strange thing was that Dustless still broke it with a punch. Bang! In the end, the random field completely collapsed, turning into countless glass-like fragments. Irene's whole body was once again exposed to Dustless's sight. Her expression was dull and numb, she was shocked to the point of being absent-minded. Her eyes were fixed on Dustless, as if she was trying to figure out his origin. Why are you still in a daze? Now you're my servant, right? Be clear about your own identity. Is it something a servant should do to look at your master without any hesitation? Dustless's sudden words gave Irene goosebumps. She recalled the previous bet and regretted it. She stared at Dustless's cheeks that deserved a beating. Even if she was very unhappy, she could only endure it humbly. In the end, she sighed helplessly, lowered her proud head, and looked at Dustless in a submissive tone. Master, if you have any orders for me to do, just say it. Irene did not have the slightest way to resist. Since she lost, she lost. From now on, she was Dustless's servant. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2153. That's a good girl. Hearing this, Wu Chen smiled with deep gratification. He was quite satisfied in his heart. It was nothing to conquer a woman, but it was a real ability to make a woman who hated him obedient. Let's see if you're useful or not, in case you shoot yourself in the foot. It would be a tragedy if you only pretend to obey me. Dustless stroked his chin and walked around Irene twice with a teasing look on his face. No, master, what do you want me to do? Irene asked respectfully. She secretly glanced at Dustless from the corner of her eyes, feeling nervous. Especially when she saw the faint smile on Dustless's face, Irene felt even more uneasy. You've got guts. You actually dared to look at me. Do you know your crime? After a moment of silence, Dustless asked in an extremely unfriendly tone. I'm guilty just because I looked at you. Irene was speechless and blushed. She didn't expect to be caught spying on Dustless. She felt quite embarrassed. However, what made her angry was that she was guilty just by looking at Dustless. She had even touched him just now. Shouldn't she be cut into pieces? Irene, you're on your own now. Yidao Shintoxiang's expression was also very strange. She stared at Dustless and saw the naughty smile on his face. She immediately knew that he was going to teach Irene a lesson. Maybe he's just testing me and doubting my loyalty. As long as I know what's good for me, it'll be fine. After thinking about it, Irene felt relieved. In this situation, as long as she lowered her stance, even if she was wrong, Dustless would definitely let her go. In the end, she would be fine. I'm sorry, master. I was rude. Irene said in a very humble tone. Good attitude. It's good that you know your mistake. Dustless's face bloomed with a very bright smile. His cheeks were also incomparably gentle, and his faint smile gave people a feeling of gentleness. Sure enough, it's just as I imagined. Next, you should let me go, or just hand over the mission to me. Sure enough, I understand men's thoughts too well. After being Westcott's secretary for so many years, she had accumulated a wealth of life experience. Actually, Dustless was deliberately looking for trouble to test her attitude. Even if she wasn't wrong, she had to admit her mistake. She definitely couldn't question Dustless's decision. If she resisted, Dustless would definitely think that she was two-faced. But after a few seconds, Irene was dumbfounded. Since you know you're wrong, you can be exempted from the heavy punishment. I have to give you a warning. This time, I'll be lenient with you. Wu Chen looked at Irene benevolently and then said lazily. Irene's expression froze. She was a little angry in her heart. She cursed inwardly, this guy really doesn't play by the rules. I clearly didn't do anything wrong, but this guy just had to show me his strength, and now he wants to punish me. This is too much. Seeing Dustless's smiling face, Irene felt stifled and angry. She regretted saying, I know I was wrong. Dustless's smiling face seemed to be waiting for her to admit her mistake. Irene felt like she had been tricked. As long as Master is happy. Even though she was unhappy, Irene could only pinch her nose and accept it. She could only look at Dustless pitifully. She only hoped that this guy wouldn't go overboard. At least, he wouldn't mess around. Irene, don't worry. I have always been a fair person. I can't tolerate sand in my eyes. Naturally, I won't deliberately make things difficult for you. Dustless promised solemnly. Irene was incomparably depressed. She thought to herself, what are you fair about? You're full of nonsense. This matter is clearly caused by you deliberately causing trouble for me, but you still dare to say that you're fair and impartial. You're too shameless. Ai Lian's gaze searched for traces of Dustless, but she noticed to her astonishment that Dustless had already vanished from her line of sight since an unknown time. Could it be that this guy's conscience is at ease and he can't bear to destroy me? Looking left and right, Irene didn't see any trace of Dustless. She suddenly felt relieved. She was really afraid that Dustless would mess around and do something crazy. Suddenly, Irene felt a chill in her lower body. She couldn't help but shiver. "Ah!" Irene instinctively screamed. Her words revealed endless fear. When she turned her head, she was surprised to see Dustless with a mischievous smile. His big hand had unknowingly lifted up Irene's clothes. Her white jade-like skin was exposed to the air. "Hooligan, stay away from me." Irene looked at Dustless in horror. This guy was too scary. He changed his face just like that. Didn't he say that he wouldn't mess around? Have you forgotten my punishment? This is it. Dustless blinked innocently and said, "You." Irene was furious. She raised her voice and angrily shouted, "You said that you wouldn't deliberately make things difficult for me and would punish me lightly. Now you actually took off my pants. You're obviously deliberately embarrassing me. This is a lighter punishment. It's taking off your pants in public. Of course, it's only in this house." Dustless said very casually. Immediately, he looked at Irene with a stern expression. "Do you want to try a heavy punishment? That's fine too." As soon as his voice fell, Dustless began to take off his clothes. "Stop." Irene panicked when she saw this. She quickly grabbed Dustless's hands tightly. If this guy was really honest with her, Irene felt that she wouldn't have the face to see anyone for the rest of her life. "Thank you, Master, for your mercy. I'll take it off now." Irene resisted the urge to vomit blood. In the blink of an eye, there was only a pair of white pants left. After all, she still had Fat Two to protect her. It was better than being punished by Dustless on the spot. "You're still too weak to fight with me." Dustless was secretly pleased. A victorious look surged between his brows. Now, he could confirm that Irene was really loyal to him. She had swallowed her anger, which indirectly showed that she was desperate. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2154. Lien wanted to cry but had no tears. She could only swallow the consequences of her own actions. It was useless to reason with a temperamental person like Wu Qin. Just a moment ago, he was still smiling like a good old man. Who would have thought that this guy was a natural performer? The speed at which he changed his face was really admirable. 1 second ago, he was in front of the flowers and under the moonlight. But the next second, he had a honeyed mouth and a dagger in his heart. Lien felt that she was deeply harmed by him. What orders does Master have? Holding back the rage in her heart, Irene asked Dustless with a fake smile. At this moment, she was completely naked. She was only wearing a Fat Two bra. Her delicate white skin was perfectly exposed to Dustless's eyes. Why isn't this despicable guy looking at me directly? He's not even looking at me. Is he purposely messing with me? Irene saw Dustless closing his eyes in satisfaction, as if he wasn't interested in anything. She couldn't help but feel a little defeated. It's very simple. Go and help me get rid of that Weisskort now. Remember to destroy the corpse and destroy the evidence. Dustless spoke frankly. He drank a mouthful of tea to moisten his throat. Then, he sneered and said, he actually dared to make a move on me. That guy is done for. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll pay them back 100-fold. Dustless naturally couldn't let the other party off the hook after being schemed against. Especially this Weisskort's DM society. It was an evil organization that targeted the elves. As long as the elves were alive, they wouldn't give up on their plans. They would continue to carry out all kinds of crazy and dark plans against the elves. In other words, as long as Dustless lived with the elves, the other party would definitely continue to provoke him. Since that was the case, he could only flatten them. This, Irene also vaguely guessed Dustless's motive. She said with some difficulty, "Although I'm very confident in my own strength, Weiss Court isn't an ordinary person. I'm afraid that I'll go for wool and come home shorn. Don't worry and just do it. I don't ask for much. Just do your best. If you fail, run for your life." Dustless nodded faintly. Although Irene was being evasive, it was undeniable that this was the truth. The DM company was also a company with many hidden talents. What Irene said was also the truth. However, Dustless did not expect her to kill Westcott. This was just a proof of her allegiance. As long as Irene attacked DM and Westcott, it would indirectly mean that she was sincerely siding with him. Running for your life after failing. Irene was startled as she looked at Dustless's handsome face in surprise. His face was as calm as still water, and his bright eyes were deep and calm. It was said that the eyes were the windows to the soul. Dustless's eyes were extremely calm, and he didn't seem to be lying. Perhaps I've really followed the right person. Although this guy is temperamental sometimes, at least he won't make unreasonable requests. Also, like I said before, Dustless has a better future than Weiss Court. Irene's resistance towards Dustless also greatly reduced. It was rare to see a boss who understood his subordinates like this. "Then I'll take my leave, Master." Irene lowered her head and said. As she spoke, she couldn't help but reveal a trace of respect. Subconsciously, she had already acknowledged Dustless. Just do your best. There's no need to fight to the death with them. Dustless nodded slightly. After all, it was just a simple test. There was no need for Irene to risk her life. Then, he waved his hand, indicating that Irene could leave. Is it really appropriate to let her leave like this? She was just fighting and killing just now, and now she's suddenly your subordinate. This change is a little too fast. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance's head was still a little stuffy. Previously, she had threatened to kill Dustless, but in the blink of an eye, she had become Dustless's subordinate. This ending was really shocking. What's the big deal? As the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes. In life, there are too many things that don't go your way. There's no perfect choice for her, so she can only choose the lesser of two evils. That's why that girl called Irene can only choose the most advantageous condition for herself. Just like me, since I don't want to die, I can only submit to this guy. Tokisaki Kurumi had appeared out of nowhere. She was dressed in a black lace robe, and her skin was faintly discernible. Her body exuded a refreshing fragrance that stirred one's blood. Every move and action of hers was captivating, making one's appetite whet. Why are you wearing such revealing clothes? Damned seductress. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance glared at Tokisaki Kurumi as if she was a love rival. Then, she hurriedly covered Dustless's eyes with her hands. Don't look, this bad woman is too evil. What does it have to do with me? Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry when Tokisaki Kurumi covered his eyes. He could only shake his head inwardly. Jealousy between women was truly a headache sometimes. However, Dustless had to admit that Tokisaki Kurumi was very good at dressing herself up. She was able to perfectly display her most charming parts. She was very mature, and she was also very beautiful. Most men wouldn't be able to walk away when they saw her. This was the reason why Tokisaki Kurumi called her a vixen. Compared to Tokisaki Kurumi, the Night Sword God 10 Fragrance was too naive. Her thoughts were too narrow, and she didn't know how to display her charm. Of course, it didn't mean that Tokasaki Kurumi was inferior to her. It was just that she didn't know much about men and women. Therefore, she was always at a disadvantage when she fought with Tokasaki Kurumi. To put it bluntly, you're just jealous. Tokasaki Kurumi revealed a look of disdain and smiled mischievously. If you have a problem with me, you can also expose yourself like me. However, you must be able to let go. Tokasaki Kurumi looked at Tokasaki Kurumi provocatively. At the same time, she flirted with Dushless and winked at him. It was obvious that she wanted him to thank her. This woman is acting as if I ordered her to do so. Don't look at me like that, or others will think that I'm the mastermind. Dustless was extremely embarrassed. He glared at Tokasaki Kurumi. He was sure that Itsuka Kotori and Tokasaki Kurumi would be led astray by her as time passed. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2155. Toka is right this time. This woman is a vixen. A vixen with a belly full of evil tricks. She's always thinking of ways to frame me. Dustless agreed with Toka's point of view. Toka Kurumi also felt helpless at times. If Itsuka Kotori and the others were here, it would be inevitable for them to scold Dustless. However, it was worth mentioning that Rain Murasame tested her favorability with Toka Kurumi. Toka Kurumi's favorability towards Dustless was no longer 0. It had risen to 30%. Although it was still pitifully low, it was much better than 0. Shameless vixen, don't be too proud. Toka Kurumi stared at Toka Kurumi. Although she was stubborn, her eyes were shining. She seemed to be very tempted by Toka Kurumi's suggestion. Seriously, this little girl is too naive. She fell for my trick so easily. I was just saying it casually. I didn't expect her to really fall for me. Where did Dustless get his charm from? How could he make Toka Kurumi fall for him? God is unfair. Toka Kurumi couldn't help but mumble. She stared at Dustless deeply and then glanced at Toka Kurumi. She was secretly unhappy. In fact, Dustless did not do anything to Toka Kurumi. At least, that was what Toka Kurumi thought. However, there was a saying that one should never guess a girl's thoughts. Unknowingly, Toka Kurumi was already dead set on Dustless. Is she really going to imitate me? This little girl always goes against me. I'm just purposely attacking her. If she really imitates me, wouldn't that be letting Dustless take advantage of her? Tokasaki Kurumi had a strange expression on her face as she stared at the Yado god Toka, whose eyes were filled with desire. She couldn't help but feel a little regretful. She wanted to trap Dustless on purpose. It would be best if Yado Dustless became the target of everyone's criticism. She wanted to wash away the humiliation that Dustless brought to her. But what if Yado god Toka decided to seduce Dustless? Wouldn't that be a huge loss? After all, Shizaki Kurumi's plan was to get all the elves to find trouble with Dustless. Even if he was unhappy, he wouldn't do anything to the elves. But if Toka really wanted to seduce Dustless, it would be unavoidable for Dustless to get intimate with him. However, Tokasaki Kurumi did not expect Toka to be so naive. Tokasaki Kurumi was simply playing with fire. Tokasaki Kurumi did not expect Toka to be so naive. Cough cough cough. Thinking of this, Tokasaki Kurumi coughed twice in an attempt to stop Yado god Toka. But just as she was about to speak, Yado god Toka left in a huff. Humph, don't think that you're the only one who knows how to flirt. If you know it, so do I. In fact, I can do it better than you. Leaving these words behind, Yuso Toka disappeared without a trace, leaving behind Tokasaki Kurumi, who could only stare blankly. TSK serves you right. Looking at the stunned Tokasaki Kurumi, Dustless laughed at her misfortune. This woman who was full of evil tricks always went against him. She even tricked Dustless for no reason. Now, she was caught in her own trap. This is the most tragic thing in the world. Dustless suddenly laughed. What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Furrowing her brows, Tokasaki Kurumi asked with an unnatural expression. Sometimes, plans always run counter to reality. She had to pretend that she did not know. Otherwise, if Dustless found out that she did not get her revenge and instead benefited Dustless, wouldn't she become a laughingstock? You don't know. Or are you pretending to be dumb? Dustless snorted in disdain and said with a smile, someone lifted a rock to smash someone else's foot. How vicious. However, as the saying goes, the net of heaven grinds slowly but surely. In the end, someone smashed her own foot. Don't you think this kind of person is ridiculous, Miss Tokasaki Kurumi? You. Tokasaki Kurumi was furious. Don't be too happy. Yato God Toka is a conservative girl. She might just be joking. Who knows? Dustless shrugged and looked at Tokasaki Kurumi with a smile. Anyway, thanks to you, I might be able to have a good eye in the future. After all, Toka's figure is not bad. She's very pleasing to the eye. Hee hee, thank you very much. You're so cooperative in picking up girls. I'm embarrassed to have you as a servant. Dustless winked at Tokasaki Kurumi with a grateful expression. PFFF, Tokasaki Kurumi almost vomited blood. Her face was gloomy. She glared at Dustless and left in anger. It seemed like she went to Toka's room. She only wanted to provoke Yato God Toka and attack Dustless. If Yato God Toka really seduced Dustless because of her, then this brat would be too easy. You think you can fight with me? Little girl, you don't have any self-awareness. You're overestimating yourself. Seeing Tokasaki Kurumi leave in a huff, Dustless smiled and returned to his room to sleep. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2156. Naturally, Tokasaki Kurumi wanted to cry. It was exactly what she had imagined. After following Tokasaki to her bedroom, she found that Tokasaki was trying on some see-through pajamas. The ones that looked more seductive were the ones that Tokasaki Kurumi was trying on. Damn it. After trying for so long, I've already worn out my mouth. In the end, it was Dustless who took advantage of it. I won't allow this to happen. Tokasaki Kurumi stomped her feet. Tokasaki Kurumi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Tokasaki Kurumi talking about her while changing her pajamas. She was just trying to provoke Tokasaki Kurumi, but she didn't expect the naive Tokasaki Kurumi to believe her. She even swore that she would defeat her. This pure elf's thinking is too simple, even childish. She really can't be judged with common sense. Tokasaki Kurumi sighed in regret. Actually, it wasn't just Tokasaki Kurumi who was depressed. Everyone else was depressed as well. DM Corporation. The highest floor of a skyscraper that pierced through the clouds was extremely luxurious. The expensive decorations in the outside world were just ordinary things here. This was the office of Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott. As one of the higher-ups and even the controller of DM, it was normal for him to receive such treatment. At this moment, he was in a dilemma. There was no other reason other than the blonde girl in front of him. Where is she? Did you say that you failed? You've disappointed me, Irene. Way Scott looked at the injured Irene with dissatisfaction in his eyes. There was even a bone-piercing chill in the depths of his eyes. It was fine that he couldn't take care of Dustless, but he couldn't even bring Tokasaki Kurumi back. How could Westcott not be angry? After all, the elves were his prey. No. Irene shook her head. Wrapped in bandages, Irene shook her head. Her attitude was colder and harsher than before. Even though a cold glint flashed past Westcott's eyes, she caught it clearly. After all, she wasn't an ordinary person. Oh, so you've succeeded. Where is she? Hearing this, Westcott's lifeless eyes suddenly shot out a cold light. This, Irene sneered in her heart, but her expression didn't change. She said, I was seriously injured. That dustless was too strong. I only caught, Princess, but because my injuries were too serious, I didn't bring her back. I just hid, Princess, in an abandoned warehouse near the battle. Not bad. You've done well. It's been hard on you, Irene. Westcott smiled and nodded, his expression changing faster than one could flip a book. Bring me to see the princess. Finally getting a test subject, Westcott was very excited. He couldn't wait to look at Irene, his hopeful eyes clearly saying, hurry up and bring me to see the Night Blade God Toka. Understood. Irene nodded solemnly, but the corners of her mouth raised into an imperceptible cold arc. He had painstakingly tricked Westcott out of the DM company in order to find a suitable environment to hunt Westcott. After all, killing Westcott in the DM company would cause a lot of trouble. Right here. Are you sure you didn't bring it to the wrong place? In the abandoned warehouse, Westcott frowned. At this moment, there was only him and Irene, there was no one else. The smell of this abandoned warehouse was very unpleasant. It was more like a garbage dump, and he could even hear the screams of rats. Of course. Irene glanced at Westcott indifferently. Her attitude was no longer as respectful as before. Like a block of ice, her eyes stared at Westcott without moving, occasionally flashing with cold light. What do you mean by this? Westcott frowned. He could naturally feel the cold air from Irene's body. He was instantly infuriated. A clown dared to challenge him. To put it bluntly, Irene was just a tool for him to capture elves. But at this moment, this tool dared to look at him like he was a prey. Wasn't this rebelling? What do I mean? Don't you know this? What an idiot. Don't you think this place is very suitable for a graveyard? No one would know if someone died. A cold voice suddenly came out from the corner of her mouth. Irene looked at the stunned Westcott with a sneer. You dare to scold me? Westcott looked as if he was struck by lightning. He looked at Irene in a daze. He didn't expect that this subordinate who was usually respectful to him would call him an idiot at this moment. Figure out your identity. Don't forget who gave you this favor. Westcott was furious and said sternly, I can ruin your reputation at any time, and even take your life. You know my ability. Whether I'm speaking nonsense or not, you know best in your heart. As a senior of the DM company, Westcott's ability was indeed extraordinary. But this wasn't a reason for Irene to be afraid of him. Irene sneered and said, however, before my reputation is ruined, you will definitely be finished. Irene's expression was cold as she pounced at Westcott with lightning speed. So fast. Westcott's pupils suddenly shrank a few times. He exclaimed that she was indeed the most powerful magician among humans. In the blink of an eye, she launched a thunderous attack. Bam! A kick came, and Westcott's body trembled. His face was as pale as snow, and his internal organs were shaking violently. Faint traces of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. This kick didn't show any mercy and wanted to end Westcott's life. You dare to betray me. Westcott was kicked back repeatedly. Fortunately, he had his own secrets and was only lightly injured in the end. But his face was very interesting. Green and white alternated, and his hair was about to stand up from anger. All this time, he was the one who schemed against others. Who dared to scheme against him? But now, he was tricked by someone else. Moreover, it was his most loyal subordinate. How could Way Scott not be angry? I want you to die without a burial place. Way Scott's eyes were spitting fire. He was smart all his life, but he was stupid at this moment. He didn't expect to be tricked by his own subordinate. This was a great humiliation. P.S. 3,000 rewards, 3,000 fresh flowers, 1,000 comments, 500 automatic subscriptions. Chapter 2157. As a confident and successful man, betrayal was a taboo, especially for a man like Westcott who had a strong sense of control. The higher he stood at the top of the pyramid, the more he was afraid of failure. He could not tolerate even a speck of sand in his eyes, not to mention that he had been plotted against by his subordinates. This was worse than death. Before I destroy you, I have a question you must answer. Suddenly realizing something, Westcott's expression was extremely gloomy. He looked straight at the girl's perfect face and held back his anger. He gritted his teeth and asked, "What's the reason? Why did you betray me? Is there someone more worthy of your loyalty than me?" "Well, it's very simple." Irene looked at Westcott with contempt and said calmly, "Actually, I feel that my wings have hardened and I don't need you anymore. Is that okay?" Unknowingly, Irene had also been infected by dustless and her words had become infuriating. Pfft. Hearing this, Westcott immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Irene angrily. What kind of ridiculous reason was this? What did she mean by, "My wings have hardened and I don't need you anymore"? Was there a more arrogant reason than this? This was simply a slap in the face and disdain. No one has ever dared to speak to me like this. You are the first, and you will also die a horrible death. Westcott roared, his handsome face twisted. Irene's words had trampled on his dignity, and the consequences were even worse than beating him up. Then I'm sorry. I was thinking that it would be best if you could commit suicide, then I wouldn't have to do it myself. After all, we are acquaintances. Irene was tit for tat, completely different from her usual quiet self. Her aura was strong and confident, and her whole body radiated a spirit that was not inferior to men. Her eyes stared straight at Westcott, occasionally flashing with undisguised contempt. It was obvious that she did not take Westcott seriously. Compared to Dustless, you are far inferior in every aspect. After pondering for a while, Irene's eyes were filled with disdain as she spoke of the instigator behind the scenes. As expected. It's that bastard. Hearing this, Westcott was furious, but he did not feel surprised. He only felt that it was ironic. He had sent Irene to assassinate Dustless and Night Sword God Toka, but in the end, his trusted subordinate had jumped ship. This was a great humiliation. Shut up. You're nothing compared to him. You're just a rat hiding in the dark. Hearing that Way Scott dared to scold her boss, Irene's expression turned cold. With a flash, she appeared in front of Way Scott without any warning. Paw! When the slap landed, a glaring, blood-red handprint appeared on Way Scott's face. How dare you slap me? After being stunned for a moment, Westcott finally realized that he had been slapped by Aileen. He felt as if his lungs were about to explode. How aggrieved was it to be slapped by a traitor? I'm not just going to slap you. I'm going to kill you. Irene looked at Westcott expressionlessly. Her tone was filled with killing intent. Clearly, she wasn't joking. Kill me. Way Scott sneered like a cunning wolf. His eyes glowed with a ghostly green light. You're underestimating me. If I could be killed so easily, I would have died a long time ago. Time flew, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. It's been so long. Why hasn't Irene returned? Could it be that she failed? That shouldn't be. Although Irene's strength is no match for mine, it's more than enough to take care of Wei Scott. In Itsuki Kotori's house, Dustless looked at the blue sky in the distance. He lowered his head and pondered. Could it be that Wei Scott still has a trump card to deal with Irene? Maybe there really is. That guy is very scheming. Itsuki Kotori suddenly interrupted. Her face was tense, and she was very cautious. She wasn't this nervous when she met the elves. That guy is not simple. He might have some tricks up his sleeve. But there's another possibility. Itsuki Kotori suddenly changed the topic. She looked at Dustless with a gloating expression. Maybe Irene submitted to you because she wanted to buy time. Do you know what I mean? Dustless. Maybe Irene was just pretending to submit to you so that she could escape. Kotori. It's not a good habit to talk about other people behind their backs. Dustless glanced at Itsuki Kotori and said confidently. You're right. But I believe in Irene. She knows what's best for her. TSK. You're just being unreasonable. Then why don't you explain why she hasn't returned for 3 days? Itsuki Kotori chewed on her lollipop and looked at Dustless with arrogance in her eyes. Maybe it's because of an accident. Dustless shook his head. He wasn't an omniscient god. How would he know? Then, he suddenly said, but it might be as you guessed before. Irene has encountered some big trouble that she can't solve. Bang! Dustless opened his mouth and was about to say something. Suddenly, the closed door was opened by a huge force. Rain. Dustless looked at the hurried Murasame Rain with surprise. He was surprised. For a long time, Murasame Rain was the kind of extremely quiet type. She was rarely so rude. Commander, I don't know why. Shido is missing. Murasame Rain looked at Itsuki Kotori and revealed the news she just got. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2158. Shido is missing. How is that possible? Itsuki Kotori was stunned for a moment, and then she muttered to herself in disbelief. Her delicate face turned ugly, and her delicate fists were clenched tightly. After all, Itsuki Shido was Kotori's only family, and there was no doubt about their relationship. Since they were young, Kotori's favorability toward Itsuki Shido was 100%. Missing? That's strange. Dustless was also shocked when he heard Rain Murasame's report. He carefully recalled the original plot, and he didn't remember Itsuki Shido going missing. Maybe he was kidnapped. Dustless narrowed his eyes, and said, that kid is very special, maybe he was captured alive and used. I think so too. Rain Murasame agreed with Dustless's opinion, and nodded carefully. I asked Shido's classmates, and many of them said that he was strange these days, and he seemed to be absent-minded. Damn it. Who did it? Itsuki Kotori angrily knocked on the table, and at this moment, she was like a huge barrel of gunpowder, and her anger could be felt no matter how far away she was. Not good. Rain Murasame looked at the angry Itsuki Kotori, and she was worried. If the elf's emotions were out of control, the consequences would be very serious. Even if Itsuki Kotori's spiritual power was sealed by Dustless, the consequences would be unimaginable. Well. Dustless frowned slightly, and suddenly he felt that some kind of power in his body was disappearing. He couldn't help but look at the angry Itsuki Kotori, and he could feel that Itsuki Kotori's power was gradually increasing, and he was surprised. Is this spiritual power reversal? Don't worry. Dustless gently patted Itsuki Kotori's shoulder, and comforted her. Kotori, don't worry, in fact, the culprit is already out. In this world, other than AST, who else could it be? Are you saying? Hearing this, Itsuki Kotori felt a little better, and her emotions gradually calmed down. Her eyes lit up, and she sneered. You mean DM? That's right, those guys are the most suspicious. Who else but them? That kid Westcott is very interested in the power of the elves, but he hasn't given up after Irene's failure. I'm afraid he'll use other tactics, such as capturing Itoka Shido alive to threaten us into handing over the elves. Dustless shrugged and said bluntly, previously, I ordered Irene to assassinate DM's top executive, Westcott, but she hasn't returned yet. I'm afraid there's also a problem. I'm afraid it was that bastard Westcott who did it. Itsuki Kotori slammed her fist on the table with murderous intent. Her pink eyes were filled with murderous intent and filled with an ominous, sinister aura. Is there any specific information? Dustless looked at Murasame Rain. He was quite confident in the intelligence collection of Ratatoskr. Murasame Rain must have collected some evidence. There are some, but I don't understand it. Murasame Rain said helplessly, I don't know much, but I'm afraid it was done by DM. Say it. Itsuki Kotori only said one word, but whether it was Dustless or Murasame Rain, they all felt a chill. That kid is better off dead. Seeing Itsuki Kotori like this, Dustless prayed sincerely in his heart, and suddenly he felt that Itoka Shido was very annoying. Murasame Rain also looked at Itsuki Kotori a few more times, and immediately said seriously, during this period, many people saw Shido take the initiative to get into a black car. I investigated according to the license plate number, and found that although it's not from DEM, it has a lot to do with them, humph. Sure enough, it's those guys. Hearing this, Itsuki Kotori suddenly became angry, and stood up angrily. It seemed that she was going to find trouble directly. But we haven't figured out the reason yet. Even if we find them, we have no excuse. After all, Shido took the initiative to go with others. Murasame Rain was quite helpless. In addition to Shido himself, maybe it's because of other people. Don't forget, there's also a little girl that Itsuka Shido cares about very much. Dustless suddenly took a sip of tea, and immediately said calmly, I remember that Itsuka Shido has a little sister, seems to be called Chongong Shina, seems to be from DEM. As long as they use her as a threat, Itsuka Shido will definitely take the bait. Boom. Perhaps because of the reverse flow of spiritual power, Itsuki Kotori's strength became a lot stronger, and she directly smashed the table, and said angrily, those guys are really despicable, damn it. Although it's just a guess, it's not impossible. Shurdao is such a sentimental person. Murasame Rain also sighed. She knew what kind of person Itsuka Shido was. As long as the other party used Chongong Shina as a threat, Itsuka Shido would definitely take the bait, and he would be the kind of person who would never back down. It just so happens that I'm also going to DM. I'm also looking forward to seeing what that kid has. Dustless's eyes were cold, and he smiled sinisterly, although I don't know why Irene didn't come back, I'm sure that it's Westcott who did it. He's just an ant, but he has guts. After all, Irene had already followed him, and Dustless naturally couldn't be indifferent when she went missing. Itsuki Kotori took a deep breath, trying to calm down her bad mood, and said seriously, that's good, Rain, you go and prepare now, and bring me all the information about DM. Wait a moment, Commander. Murasame Rain nodded and left. She couldn't help but mourn for Westcott. If he offended these two, she was afraid that his end would be extremely miserable. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2159. She knew Itsuki Kotori's temper. Even if she hurt herself, she wouldn't hurt Itsuka Shido. Otherwise, this little girl would go berserk. In the original work, It was because Toshisaki Kurumi injured Itsuka Shido that Itsuka Kotori went berserk. Her spiritual energy reversed and she turned into a spirit. She displayed her powerful strength and defeated Toshisaki Kurumi, almost killing him in the end. After dealing with that arrogant idiot, it's about time to leave. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at the warm sun outside the window. The idiot he was talking about was Waycourt. Dustless stretched his back and squinted his eyes in enjoyment. Although this kind of life was comfortable and unrestrained, it gradually became boring as time passed. No matter what it was, whether it was people or things, as time passed, the feelings would fade away. The interest in the beginning would turn into boredom. Leave after success. Itsuka Kotori looked over. Even though Dustless was muttering to himself, she could still hear him clearly. She couldn't help but ask strangely, "Are you going to leave? Do you still have a home? All good things must come to an end." Dustless nodded and looked at the dazed Itsuka Kotori's face. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? You've never been good to me, so why are you looking so pitiful now? Can't bear to part with me?" Dustless got closer to Itsuka Kotori and looked at her beautiful face with a teasing expression. Humph. After hearing Dustless's words, Itsuka Kotori's unnatural expression quickly disappeared. She said with disdain, "Who would like a lecherous man like you? Stop dreaming. Do you think I'm a glutton like Toshiaki? That I can't even find my way around because of some soybean flour bread?" Dustless didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled as if Itsuka Kotori wasn't talking about him. "You're really heartless. To think I wanted to take you with me. Of course." Hearing this, the joy in Itsuka Kotori's eyes disappeared instantly. Her expression changed at lightning speed. She looked at Wu-chin with disdain and snorted. "There are countless people who like me. Even if I wait for a few decades, it won't be your turn. This girl really likes to push her luck." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had seen many narcissistic and arrogant people, but it was rare to see someone as arrogant as Itsuka Kotori. Dong dong dong. At this time, the sound of high-heeled shoes was heard again. Wu-chin and Kotori looked over and saw Murasame Rain's voice. "You're here already. Rain, you've collected all information about Waycourt." Itsuka Kotori saw Rain Murasame, who left for less than 2 minutes, and ordered in a low voice, "Go and check it again. I want all the details. Waycourt is very mysterious. Everything about him must be, looks like it's not necessary." Before Itsuka Kotori could finish, Dustless interrupted her. He saw the anxiety in Murasame Rain's eyes and shrugged, "I'm afraid there's a new problem. I just changed my clothes and was about to go out when I saw a letter at the door." Murasame Rain put the letter on the table, and the sender was Waycourt. "That guy wrote a letter." Dustless curled his lips and said with disdain, "He's just a small fry. Why would he write a letter? Idiot." Murasame Rain and Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless speechlessly. They didn't know what this guy was thinking. "What did it have to do with you?" Ahem. Noticing that the two women were looking at him strangely, Wu-chin coughed awkwardly. "I mean, the content of this letter is probably a challenge letter or a threat letter. That stinky bug is about to lose his life, but he still wants to play this game. Isn't he asking for humiliation? He's asking to be humiliated. I'd like to see what kind of tricks Waycourt is going to play." Itsuka Kotori opened the envelope and took out the letter. She squinted her eyes and looked at it carefully for a while. Bang! A few minutes later, Itsuka Kotori angrily slammed the table and said with hatred, "That guy really caught Shido and asked me to give him all the elves, or else what?" Murasame Rain asked nervously. Seeing Itsuka Kotori's pale face, she vaguely guessed something. "Do you still need to say it?" "Of course it's to kill them." Wu-chin gulped down a mouthful of tea. There was a faint evil smile at the corner of his mouth. He was not worried at all. Instead, he took pleasure in other people's misfortune. He could not help but laugh secretly. If Itoka Shido can be killed, I will be merciful and grant Scott a complete corpse. In fact, he didn't like Itsuka Shido for a long time. This guy didn't have any power at all, but he still wanted to save the elves. Wasn't he looking for death? If it wasn't for Dustless, this guy would have been killed already. Now that Wei Court was willing to help Dustless get rid of this burden, he couldn't ask for more. It's the same as Dustless's guess. Murasame Rain took the letter in Itsuka Kotori's hand and looked at it carefully. She frowned and said, he really used Shido. No wonder he left with Wei Court's people. But didn't Shido think that this must be Wei Court's trap? I told you. Dustless was quite calm as if he already expected this. Itsuka Shido is too kind. He used the emotional card a little bit, and that guy will definitely be fooled. It's not that Wei Court is too smart, it's just that Itsuka Shido is too naive. Without power, he always wanted to do things beyond his ability. It was only a matter of time before he was unlucky. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2160. It's too late to say anything now. Don't worry about these useless things. What's important now is how to save my brother and your Irene. Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless and said seriously. Especially when she mentioned, your Irene, she purposely emphasized the word, your Irene. Obviously, she was reminding Dustless not to get involved. Although Itsuka Kotori wasn't happy with what Dustless said before, she could only grit her teeth and admit it. After all, this was the truth. Itsuka Shido was too childish when it came to relationships. After being tricked and used slightly, even if he knew that it was a trap, he would still persevere and fall into it. The current situation was like that. He clearly knew that Wolcott wasn't a good person, but he still fell into the trap. Where is the place of the transaction? Dustless didn't want to argue with Itsuka Kotori and looked at Rain Murasame. Their company, DM in our company. Murasame Ling Yin's face was ugly. This was like a sheep entering the tiger's den. What if we reject Wei Court's offer? Itsuka Kotori frowned and asked. Rain Murasame went silent for a while and read the letter carefully. She shook her head and said, it's not detailed. He just asked us to take Toka and the others to DEM's company to sell Irene and Shido. We can only follow Wei Court's arrangement for now. After hesitating, Itsuka Kotori nodded. For her, Itsuka Shido's safety was more important than anything else. I reject. But Dustless looked coldly at Itsuka Kotori and said seriously, Toka and the others aren't goods. You want to trade them? I reject, no one. You. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori was enraged. Are you out of your mind? If you reject, not only will Shido die, even Irene won't be able to escape Wei Court's torture. He hates traitors. Itsuka Kotori took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I know Wei Scott quite well. That guy is definitely a despicable person. The reason he didn't mention what would happen if they rejected him in the letter is probably to torture them slowly, is that so? So what? Dustless took a sip of tea and said coldly, I've done a lot of bad things in my life, but no matter what, I've always had a clear conscience. I've never regretted my actions. If you want me to trade the 10 incense with someone else, dream on. You're a blockhead. Itsuka Kotori shouted angrily. She looked at Dustless's expressionless face and felt helpless. She had no choice but to mediate. I'm only giving them the 10 incense temporarily. Do you think I'm abandoning the elves? Even if you agree, I won't. Itsuki Kotori's job was to protect the elves. How could she hand the elves over to Weiss Court? Absolutely impossible. The reason why he did this was because he wanted to redeem Itoka Shido and the others, and then find a way to rescue Toka and the others. I still refuse. Wuchin shrugged his shoulders. His unyielding attitude made Itsuki Kotori extremely depressed. She roared, "Do you want Irene to be tortured to death? Just watch on helplessly." Was he going to leave her to die? I remember that Irene has already joined you. I didn't say that I'm going to leave her to die. Don't accuse me. Dustless shook his head mysteriously. His eyes emitted a scarlet murderous aura. He looked at Murasame Rain and asked, "Do you know the location of DM's company?" DM has a lot of industries, and the important companies are hidden in the dark. But in order to facilitate this transaction, Weiss Court told us the location of the meeting. That's enough. I'll do this transaction. Hearing this, Dustless smiled. With the detailed location, why would he worry about not being able to destroy Weiss Court? Dustless didn't like him for a long time. That kid will definitely die, especially since he dared to capture his people. As for Go Shido, Dustless was too lazy to manage him. If possible, he didn't mind finding a suitable opportunity to get rid of Go Shido. This kid was always a burden. If he continued to be with him, maybe he would cause some big problems. You finally agreed. Seeing Dustless's confident look, Itsuki Kotori thought that he agreed to hand over Toka and the others temporarily. She immediately took a sip of her coffee and smiled. I didn't expect that the blockhead would finally be enlightened. You misunderstood me. Dustless glanced at Itsuki Kotori and said coldly, I plan to go alone and kill all those people and get Irene. As for handing over Toka, I'll say it again. Dream on. I've said it before, I don't want to live a grand life. I just want to have a clear conscience. Pfft. Itsuki Kotori's chest rolled, and she spat out all the coffee. She looked at Dustless angrily. Why didn't this guy understand what she meant? He was only temporarily handing 10 fragrance and the others over to Waistcott to stabilize the situation. He would then find an opportunity to snatch them back. However, Dustless was incomparably stubborn at this moment. He was completely one-track minded and did not know how to be flexible. That little girl trusts me a lot. If I hand her over to Wei Court, how do you expect me to face her in the future? Dustless asked calmly. Although his tone was light, it was firm. Not to mention, Dustless sneered and said, that idiot Westcott actually dares to bargain with me. He doesn't even know what kind of existence his enemy is. Send him to his death. Destroy that bullshit TDM company along with him. Dustless's tone was extremely calm. Itsuki Kotori and Murasame Rain looked at each other. Hearing Dustless's words, their scalps went numb. The DM company had thousands of employees. Was this guy going to kill them all? The two girls stared at Dustless. Suddenly, they realized that they were wrong. Dustless may seem like a gentle and quiet person, but deep down, he was a demon king who killed without batting an eyelid. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 100 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2161. Seeing Dustless's insistence, Itsuki Kotori felt helpless. After all, the decision was in Dustless's hands from the very beginning. Toka and the others only listened to Dustless. Even Toka Kurumi, who was always at odds with Dustless, had to follow Dustless's orders. Since you've made up your mind, I won't stop you. Remember to be careful. Itsuki Kotori looked at Dustless seriously and said with a hint of concern in her voice. Don't worry. It's just Wei Coat. I can squash him to death with a single breath. How dare he bargain with me? He must be tired of living. Dustless's body emitted a bone-chilling aura. Those who tried to bargain with him never had a good ending. Hee hee. TSK TSK. If it weren't for your value, I would have killed you traitors long ago. A man's sinister laughter came from a sealed room. This room was very special. The walls were made of special steel. The material was extremely hard and shiny. There were also 3 conspicuous crosses. Irene, Itsuka Shido, and Shina Chongoya were all tied to the crosses. Their expressions were painful. The man with a sinister smile in front of them was the infamous Weisskort. You despicable bastard. Irene looked at Waycoat and cursed him for being careless. When Dustless ordered her to kill Waycoat, Irene hesitated. In fact, she had the absolute advantage and could have killed Waycoat at any time. However, she didn't kill him in the end. Firstly, she wasn't the merciless type. Secondly, Waycoat had a hostage. Irene didn't kill him. However, as the saying went, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Knowing that Irene was moved by compassion, Westcott tried to persuade her with reason and moved her with emotion. Very soon, Irene was tricked, and it was too late for regrets. Despicable. Perhaps. Westcott only responded softly. He didn't care whether it was despicable or honorable at all. He smiled and said, however, these are not important to me. As long as I get the elves, I will leave this broken place of Japan. I can give up everything else. The only thing I care about is the elves, including you, Irene. Waycoat looked deeply at Irene and said, actually, it's right for you to betray me. Because one day in the future when I get the elves, even if you didn't betray me, I will still kill you. Why? Irene's face was ashen. She glared at Waycoat. This bastard's intention to get rid of her. Do you even need to say it? At this moment, a cold voice suddenly rang out. Everyone was stunned, including Westcott. Who is it? Get out here. Waycoat looked around and found that there was no one around. He broke out in cold sweat. This room is sealed to defend against sudden attacks. It's made of special steel and the most advanced technology of this era. But this sound, where did it come from? Waycoat's face was ugly. His eyes widened again. He looked around, but there was still no one. Irene, the reason why he wants to kill you is that if the elves disappear one day in the future, you, the strongest magician and former ally, will become the biggest obstacle. This mysterious figure hit the nail on the head. He also planned to do so. After the elves disappear, Irene would be redundant. It would be best if she died. I see. Hearing this, Irene understood and nodded in agreement. She smiled bitterly and said, that's right. If the elves disappear, my value will be greatly reduced. I will even become a threat. But you are, Irene's mind buzzed. She suddenly felt that this voice was familiar. A young man's figure appeared in her mind. You are Lord Dustless. Dustless. Waycoat looked as if he had seen a ghost when he heard this. His face drooped and became gloomy. Towards Dustless, Wayscott had always harbored reverence in his heart. He wasn't an elf, but he had a strength that was even more terrifying than an elf. Waycoat had a love-hate relationship with Dustless. He loved Dustless' powerful strength, but he hated Dustless for being too treacherous. With just a few words, he made Ellen betray him. If it wasn't for Waycoat's intelligence, he might have been killed by Ellen. But there is nothing to worry about. Waycoat was relieved after thinking about it. He said calmly, this secret room uses the most advanced technology. Even if I set it up as a precaution, the elves will not be able to break in. How can a vulgar person like you understand my master's strength? You are just a frog at the bottom of a well. How laughable. Irene took the opportunity to mock him. Is that so? Then why doesn't he come in? Wei Coat laughed sinisterly. If he can come in, I will stand there and let him kill me. I promise I will not resist. Boom boom boom. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a deafening sound swept across the room. Endless shock waves spread out. It was so strong that people could not open their eyes. Then, a blinding light shone in. Look. I have come in openly. Shouldn't you be standing there to die? The Grim Reaper's voice echoed in Westcott's ears. He ignored the piercing pain in his eyes from the scorching sun and forcefully opened them. A glowing figure stood in front of Westcott, tall and straight like a mountain. Wei Coat, right? Give me your neck. I have not killed anyone for a long time. I have specially come to send you to heaven. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2162. How is this possible? Who do you think you are to come in so easily? Weiss screamed at the top of his lungs. His old face was stinging. He had just said that he would block Dustless outside, and this guy had barged in. Wasn't this a little too fast? How is it not possible? Dustless asked back. What you can't do doesn't mean that others can't do it either. You're so stupid. Do you think that others can only stand behind you and look up to you if you can't do it yourself? Really, you're even more narcissistic than that little brat coterie. Dustless mocked Wei Scott. At the same time, he glanced at Irene. As for Itsuki and his sister, they were in a trance. Their faces were pale and bloodless. Clearly, they had been tortured by Wei Scott. What a silly girl. She actually fell into a trap to save Shido. Dustless could only roll his eyes after eavesdropping on their conversation. In fact, he really wanted to kill Shido. It would be best if he died. He was too much of an eyesore. Cut the crap. Where's the elf? You've seen my letter, right? Where's the elf I need? Why did you come alone? Looking into the distance, Wei Scott realized that Dustless was the only one who came. Wei Scott's expression instantly turned black as a black pot. He smiled sinisterly and said, "Have you forgotten what I said? Elf?" Dustless looked directly at Weiss, completely ignoring his crazy expression. He sneered. "You still dare to bargain with me? Kill yourself now and I'll leave your corpse intact. I don't even want to dirty my hands with trash like you." You! Wei Scott was instantly enraged. He looked at Wuchen angrily. Not only did this bastard ignore his agreement, but he even dared to look down on him. How dare he? You forced me to do this. Weiss suddenly strode towards Irene and smiled evilly. Since you didn't bring your elf, I'll kill the hostage. Let's start with Irene. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a dagger and slowly slid it towards Irene's neck. I didn't even blink. Seeing the approaching dagger, Irene didn't know why, but her mind was incomparably calm. She looked at Wei Scott with disdain. Following you for a few years, I can only say that I was blind to follow a wild dog that eats people without spitting out the bones. After that, Irene closed her eyes and waited for death. You're courting death. Wei Scott was enraged by Irene's words, and the dagger in his hand stabbed towards Irene's forehead. At the same time, a strong gravitational force locked onto Irene, uprooting the cross that bound her. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. Just as the tip of the dagger was about to pierce through Irene, a gravitational force that distorted space and time erupted from Dustless's palm. It locked onto Irene tightly and sucked her body together with the cross. Is this the power to control gravity? Wei Scott's eyes froze as he looked at Dustless in disbelief. Meanwhile, Irene had already landed beside Dustless. Although she's trash, she can tell that I'm controlling gravity. Not bad. Dustless nodded slowly, silently agreeing with Wei Scott's words. Then. I want you even more. Irene escaped. Not only did Wei Scott not realize the danger, but he became even crazier. He realized that compared to Dustless, any elf was weak and couldn't even withstand a single blow. You're courting death. Locking onto the madness and greed in Wei Scott's eyes, Dustless revealed his killing intent. After so many years, there was still someone who dared to look at him with greed. It was probably during the period when Dustless hadn't risen to power yet. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Without wasting any time, Dustless condensed a dazzling light at the tip of his thumb and aimed it at Wei Scott's head. Don't mess around, or we'll fight to the death. As if sensing the aura of death, Wei Scott suddenly shivered. He quickly pointed at Itsuka Shido and threatened, You saved one, but I still have 2 hostages. If you dare to do anything to me, I'll humiliate them both. Wei Scott warned loudly. In fact, he didn't dare to kill Itsuka Shido and Konya Shina at the moment. He was still counting on them to threaten Dustless to live. Are you sure? Hearing this, Dustless's lips curled up into an evil smile. He laughed in his heart. I originally planned to kill you and end it once and for all, but it seems that I can postpone it. I'll purposely provoke you, kid. It'll be best if I can borrow your hand to kill Itsuka Shido. Then, it'll have nothing to do with me. Thinking of this, Dustless lowered the light in his hand. Phew. At least you know what's good for you. Seeing this, Wei Scott heaved a sigh of relief. Having Dustless's bright light aimed at his head, he was really scared. Hee, looks like there's still a chance. Then, Wei Scott laughed excitedly. Since Dustless chose to give up on attacking, it meant that he still cared about Itsuka Shido and Konya Shina's lives. Poochie. However, not long after, Wei Scott felt a sharp pain in his right leg. He almost lost his balance and fell to the ground. Looking down, Westcott was shocked to discover that there was a hole in his right calf at some point in time. Furthermore, the wound was emitting a smell of smoke. Clearly, it was charred. ****, I'll make you pay. Having his calf crippled by Dustless, Wei Scott was instantly enraged. He glared at Dustless. This guy was too strong, so naturally, he didn't dare to cause trouble. Therefore, Wei Scott vented all the accumulated anger in his body on Itsuka Shido. Bang bang bang. Slap slap slap. With his right leg crippled, Wei Scott, who was a powder keg, was completely ignited. He punched and kicked Itsuka Shido like a madman, slapping and slapping him like crazy. In less than 10 seconds, Itsuka Shido's body swelled up. There were injuries all over his body. He was beaten up by the angry Wei Scott. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2163. Bang! 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 Wei Scott was like an angry lion. Dustless could not afford to offend him, but that did not mean he could not afford to offend Ido Shido. Wei Scott laughed bitterly and beat him up without hesitation. Poochie! 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 After a few seconds, Ido Shido spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was red and purple, and there were fist marks all over his body. He looked extremely miserable. Although Wei Scott did not dare to kill Ido Shido directly, he still inflicted the greatest pain on his body. You bastard, why did you hit me? The one who punched you in the leg was that guy, right? Shido was still in a daze, but after Wei Scott's beating, his mind suddenly became very clear. He looked at Wei Scott angrily, and his mind was filled with hundreds of thousands of what the f***ck. What, you don't like it? Wei Scott sneered, and his handsome face was full of arrogance. I don't like you, okay? Can't I hit you to vent my pain? You dare to talk back? Paw. 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 At the end of his sentence, Wei Scott gave him a few more slaps. Shido's mouth was crooked, and blood mixed with teeth fell out. It was as miserable as it could be. It hurts. Shido screamed. His face was swollen and bruised, and he looked like a pig's head. His eyes were also punched a few times, and the fist marks were black, like a panda's. Shido, didn't hit you. What's the point of bullying me? If you have the guts, go beat up someone else. Shido shouted angrily. Being beaten up by Wei Scott for no reason, no matter how good his temper was, he was still furious. Dustless hit you, and you hit him if you have the guts. What's the point of bullying me? You still don't like it? Interesting. Wei Scott was shocked, but it only lasted for a moment. He looked at Shido with even more anger and cursed, that Dustless looked down on me, and now you, a piece of trash, dare to look down on me. You deserve a beating. Bang bang bang. Thinking of this, Wei Scott kicked Shido twice more. He was extremely cunning and purposely chose the softest part of his abdomen to attack, causing Shido to grit his teeth in pain. Why is this brat so tough? Dustless, who was expressionless on the side, was actually laughing in his heart. At the same time, he was secretly speechless. It seems that the protagonists of every world are all thick-skinned and extremely durable. Pooh! In the end, Shido spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. What a pity. He's still breathing. This Westcott has a pig's brain. Can't you just give him a stab? Fight my ass. Dustless cursed inwardly, but on the surface, he was filled with righteous indignation. He looked at Westcott furiously and rebuked, how dare you bully Sherdao like this? I'll make sure you die without a complete corpse. Hee hee, are you sad? Westcott looked at Dustless with interest. When he saw that Dustless wanted to tear him into pieces, he was elated. He secretly laughed. Although I can't beat you, at least I can make Dustless so angry. Thinking of this, Westcott's big hand grabbed Shido again. Slap slap slap. After a few more merciless slaps, Shido, who had been knocked unconscious, opened his eyes and mouth again under the stimulation of pain. He glared angrily at Wei Scott, who was beating him like a madman. Just as he was about to curse, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his mouth. Westcott became fiercer and fiercer. He knocked out Shido's front teeth and his mouth was full of blood. Sob sob sob. Shido, I'm sorry. Seeing Shido's miserable appearance, Dustless actually squeezed out 2 drops of tears and cried in sorrow. The more you cry, the more I'll beat you. I'll make you angry. Westcott thought. Sob 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 sob. Seeing that Westcott ignored him and continued to beat Shido, Dustless cried even harder. Dustless's cries became louder and louder. Westcott became more excited when he realized that Dustless must be concerned about Shido. Bullying this kid was indirectly hurting Dustless's self-esteem. Westcott became fiercer and fiercer. This guy, she looked at Wuchen carefully and saw his sorrowful appearance. She lowered her head and muttered to herself, this guy can't be doing this on purpose, right? He clearly knows that the more he cries, the more Wei Scott will beat Itsuka up. Yet, he still cries so sadly. In fact, if one looked carefully, one would discover that Wu Chen's shoulders were twitching and the corners of his mouth were twitching non-stop. How was he crying? He was obviously laughing non-stop. He was just forcefully squeezing out tears to cover it up. It's on purpose. It must be on purpose. It's definitely on purpose. Shido glared at Dustless. His eyes were bleeding, and so were his ears and nose. After being beaten up by Westcott, he was severely injured. Even his abdomen had caved in. Ha! Dustless's crying stopped instantly. He suddenly felt a cold gaze. He subconsciously looked up and realized that Shido was staring at him. Have I been discovered? Dustless didn't hide it after being discovered by Shido. The corner of his mouth curled into a bloodthirsty smile. In that case, you can be on your way. Don't worry, kid. I'll take care of your sister for you. Roar. As if reading Dustless's mind, Shido roared. However, he was already crippled. His throat was no longer normal, and he could only roar like a wild beast. Go to hell, Tsukumi. With a roll of his eyes, boundless mental strength invaded Shido's mind. Dustless gave Shido a pretty good death. At the very least, he enjoyed 24 hours in Tsukumi's world, enjoying the treatment of an emperor in the world. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2164. Kid, don't play dead. Get up, you're my trump card. If you die, I'll be surrounded by these people, Westcott roared. Seeing Shido's eyes were closed and he wasn't even breathing, Westcott slapped him a few more times. He instinctively felt that Shido was faking it. After all, even though he had abused Shido, it was only physical abuse. He didn't attack any of his vital organs. Westcott knew that Shido was his life, so he couldn't kill him. He didn't have the guts either. Without a hostage, he would be eaten alive. Slap. 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 Seeing that Shido didn't move at all after the slap, Westcott was furious. He cursed in his heart, this brat is really good at acting. It's like it's real. So he slapped him a few more times. Brother. However, Kotori, who had just arrived, happened to see this scene. Seeing Shido's pitiful state, her eyes turned red. Shido, wake up. I know you're just too tired and fell asleep. Don't play dead. After a while, Kotori called Shido's name with a trembling voice. Her voice was so sad that anyone who heard it would cry. However, Shido ignored her. His eyes were still closed, and he looked dead. Kotori was speechless. It was as if she had been abandoned by the world. She was petrified. No need to scream. No one will listen to you even if you scream yourself hoarse. Shido is dead. Dustless said with a heavy expression. There was a hint of sadness in his voice. This guy is a movie king. Irene was speechless. Her eyes were twitching. She was sure that Dustless had deliberately killed Ishido. However, as Dustless's little brother, Irene chose to remain silent. She pointed at Westcott and angrily rebuked, "It's all because of this bastard that Ishido died. I'm going to cut you into pieces." Kotori looked at Westcott coldly. Her eyes were like a venomous snake that had been hungry for a long time. Her eyes were filled with venom, making Westcott's heart tremble. Kotori had also witnessed the scene of Westcott beating up Shido. Oh no, this is bad. Westcott felt a chill run down his spine. Naturally, he also sensed the danger. He instinctively took a few steps back and hid behind Chongong Zana's body. He threatened loudly, "You'd better know your place. Be careful or I'll kill this little girl." With the dagger pointed at Shonya Shina, Westcott warned, "This guy is Atsuka Shido's only sister. He wouldn't want his own sister to die, would he?" It had to be said that Westcott was quite smart. He knew how to make use of the human form. After hearing this, Atsuka Kotori's body stiffened. She was hesitant. "There's a chance. Fortunately, I'm smart. I didn't see the value of these trash." Seeing Atsuka Kotori's hesitation, Westcott let out a sigh of relief. The reason why Atsuka Kotori stopped was because she didn't want Shido's only sister to die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a large number of light beams came from afar. Countless women wearing display devices descended from the sky and quickly arrived at Westcott's location. These trash. What a waste of time. They've been waiting for me for so long. Are they finally here? Westcott's heart was relieved. He finally felt that there was hope for him to live. It's AST. Tokichi Origami and Hikari Fujiko. Dustless looked up and suddenly saw two familiar faces. To save a scumbag like you, AST mobilized so many people. They really care about you. Atsuka Kotori suppressed her anger and gritted her teeth. Hee, of course. After all, we have a symbiotic relationship. If I'm dead, who can provide AST with the display device they want? Westcott chuckled and said with a tone as if everything was under his control. My death won't benefit AST. It's expected that they would lower their heads and help me. Not to mention, they were just using each other. Westcott's death wouldn't benefit AST either. AST's mission is to capture the elves. The elves are all in Dustless's hands. Since they appeared here, capturing the elves is also one of their missions. Oh right, there's something else I forgot to tell you. Westcott's face was gloomy. His hoarse voice was filled with pride. I forgot to tell you. When I first started, I knew that you wouldn't hand over the elves. So, I made two preparations. Now that AST is back, it means that the mission I gave them was completed perfectly. Two preparations. What do you mean? Atsuka Kotori was embarrassed. Even though she wanted to cut Westcott into pieces, she had to hold it in. I ordered AST to attack your house. Looking at Atsuka Kotori, Westcott laughed coldly and said, the elves' powers have been sealed. Capturing them will be a piece of cake for us. Now that AST is here, it can only mean one thing: the mission was completed perfectly. How is it? Now the tables have turned, right? Ha ha ha, it seems that I'm the final victor. Westcott looked at the silent Dustless with disdain. He purposely laughed loudly as if he was afraid that Dustless would not hear him. You sly bastard. It's a perfect match for DM to have a scum like you, Atsuka Kotori said angrily. Thank you for the compliment. Westcott calmly accepted Atsuka Kotori's compliment, but his eyes were fixed on Dustless. He wanted to capture a trace of sadness, but Dustless was like a calm sea, not showing any sadness from beginning to end. His expression was as calm as usual. Westcott could even feel the mockery and contempt in Dustless's eyes, as if he was watching a clown's performance. Westcott suddenly felt a sense of apprehension and hesitation as if a disaster was about to befall him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2165. After hearing such a perfect plan from me, this guy should be disappointed. Will Coates scrutinized Dustless, trying to find a flaw on his face. However, he was destined to be disappointed. All along, Dustless's expression didn't change. He was like a piece of lifeless ice, silent and uncommunicative. It was as if everything had nothing to do with him. You're the one who should be disappointed, idiot. Of all the people, you actually chose AST to work for you. Are you retarded? After a moment of silence, Dustless's face showed a mocking expression. You, good boy, I've already captured the elves, and you still dare to talk to me like this? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill all of them? Wilcote threatened loudly, his words were filled with madness, and it seemed like he was really going to kill him. Do you see that? Pointing at the AST members flying over from afar, Wilcote laughed. Each of them has elves in their hands. What are you going to use to fight me? You don't know what's good for you. Looking closely, he saw the AST members flying over, each of them carrying elves. Something doesn't seem right. Wilcote suddenly realized something and muttered to himself, puzzled. If the elves were tied up in chains, it would be understandable, but the strange thing was that the little hands of Yamazaki Toka and the others took the initiative to hold on to the AST members. Especially when the elves were talking and laughing with the AST members, it was simply blinding to Wilcote's dog eyes. Strange, when did the elves start to be so obedient? Wilcote asked with a frown. His eyes flickered, and immediately guessed, could it be that Tokiichi Origami and the others used some trick to deceive the elves? Is that why they are so peaceful and friendly? All along, the elves had been synonymous with cruelty, extremely unfriendly to humans, and even more so to AST who wanted to kill them. Now, they were so harmonious, Wilcote found it unbelievable. Anyway, no matter what, AST brought the elves over. This means that victory is in my hands. Soon, the doubts in Wilcote's heart disappeared, and he looked coldly at Dustless, and sneered, why aren't you screaming now? Come and kill me. If you dare to touch me, I'll kill one of the elves. Since there are so many of them, one more won't matter. You despicable trash. Irene and Itsuka Kotori glared at Waistcoat furiously. Their eyes were burning with fire as if they wanted to burn Waistcoat alive. This guy was too cunning. He wasn't strong, but he was good at scheming. I want to ask, is this your trump card? Dustless completely ignored Westcott's mockery and asked calmly, I'll give you one last chance. Show me your other trump card. You. If your trump card is just to threaten me with the 10 incense sticks. Westcott, right? You'll die a horrible death. Moreover, your so-called trump card is actually a lousy one. You're just asking for humiliation. Then I'll have to disappoint you. This is my trump card. Westcott snorted valiantly and arrogantly, showing off his arrogance as he said, do it if you have the guts. I can guarantee that I'll kill an elf for every step you take. Ha ha ha, you still want to fight me? Ha ha ha, his unbridled laughter filled the air, and Irene and Itsuka Kotori's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Either one of them could easily kill Westcott, but the lives of the elves were still in Westcott's hands, so they didn't dare to say anything. Master. At the same time, the members of AST landed on the ground, and each of them had an elf in their hands, and they looked very respectful. Very good, ha ha ha, Westcott laughed wildly again, and looked down at Dustless with a crazed look, and said arrogantly, kneel now, or I'll kill these elves. It doesn't matter if one of them dies. You be **starred. Itsuka Kotori and Irene's faces turned green. They didn't expect Westcott to be so despicable, using the lives of the elves to force Dustless to kneel. This man was not bad-looking, but his actions were too disgusting. Kneel and beg me. Westcott screamed madly in his mind. He was going to pay back the humiliation he received from Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless looked at Westcott with pity. After looking at him for a while, he asked speechlessly, are you a pig? Or are you retarded? You're asking for it. Westcott's face twisted, and he looked at the elves in Tokichi Origami's hands, and ordered coldly, Tokichi Origami, kill her now. After saying that, Westcott looked at Dustless arrogantly, sincerely hoping that this guy would kneel down and beg for mercy. However, Dustless only kept silent, and even closed his eyes, as if he had nothing to do with it. Bastard, are your ears plugged? Kill her. Westcott was furious. Dustless ignoring him was bad enough, but what angered him the most was that Tokichi Origami was also standing still, as if she didn't hear the order just now. Now, kill the brat in your hands. Westcott roared again, his voice sounding like an enraged lion. However, what made Westcott vomit blood was that Tokichi Origami didn't even look at him. Rebel, are you all rebelling? How dare you ignore my order? Do you believe that I'll make you pack up and get lost? A mere AST dares to challenge me, you're courting death. Westcott roared like an erupting volcano, his tone filled with endless anger. However, Tokichi Origami and the others still didn't move, treating Westcott's words like air. They didn't even look at Westcott, and only stared at one person with respectful eyes, Dustless. Westcott, haven't you figured it out? You've been wrong about one thing from the beginning. Dustless suddenly opened his eyes, and looked at the twisted middle-aged man with pity. The lord they called before was me. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2166. Call you Lord. Bullshit. Without even thinking about it, Wilcourt immediately denied it. Dustless sneered, do you think I'm an idiot? This group of people is AST, the most hostile existence to elves, even more so than me. How could they be with you? AST was a special organization established to annihilate elves. They would try their best to destroy any elves they encounter. Dustless was a group of people who protected elves. How could they recognize Dustless as their boss? This joke was not funny at all. You don't believe me. Hearing that, Dustless looked at Wilcourt with a mocking expression. He then looked at Yuichi Origami and the others and said lazily, who are you calling Lord? Some idiot's head is stuffed with donkey hair. His head can't hear clearly. Let him hear it clearly. You're going too far. Hearing that, Wilcourt was furious. This bastard, as a powerhouse, did not have the bearing of a powerhouse at all. He mocked him the moment he opened his mouth. He was too willful. I advise you to be sensible. Wilcourt was too lazy to argue. He only looked at Yuichi Origami and the others with an unfriendly gaze. His eyes were flickering with a cold light, obviously warning them. However, Yuichi Origami and the others did not even look at Wilcourt. They treated this guy as a clown and directly ignored him. Lord Dustless. Under Wilcourt's incredulous gaze, Yuichi Origami and the others kneeled on one knee and looked at Dustless with a respectful expression. How is this possible? Why is AST and the organization that protects elves together? Have you all betrayed us? Wilcourt roared furiously. Looking at Yuichi Origami and the others kneeling on the ground, his eyeballs almost popped out. First, Irene betrayed him. Now, AST, who he trusted, also betrayed him. Wilcourt even wanted to die. His face was green with anger. How could he endure this? He was being played around by Dustless like an idiot. This guy, Itsuki Kotori and Irene looked at each other, and they could see the shock in each other's eyes. Dustless was able to subdue AST without them noticing. This was a method that sent chills down their spines. After all, AST was extremely hostile towards elves. Rise, all of you. Looking at the girls kneeling on one knee, Dustless revealed a gentle smile. Why did he conquer this group of arrogant girls? In fact, it was very simple. There was only one word: strength. No matter which world one was in, having the supreme power to crush a world would give one a great right to speak, and one could walk unscrupulously. Yuichi Origami was subdued by Dustless's strength and resurrected her parents. Therefore, this cold and arrogant girl submitted to him. She lowered her arrogant head and obediently followed Dustless's orders. Therefore, Dustless finally convinced the entire AST through Yuichi Origami. In the past, AST had a great battle with Dustless because of the Night Sword God Toka. The result was very miserable and they were crushed. From that moment on, this group of girls feared Dustless. Now, it was natural for them to side with Dustless. Motherf *Ker, you bunch of ingrates, trash. After being stunned for a while, Wilcourt cursed loudly. He was so angry that his eyes were seeing stars. His angry roar echoed in the sky and lingered in the air. I was the one who provided you with your ambition. Now you betrayed me. You bunch of trash, aren't you afraid of suffering? Wilcourt was like a gambler who had lost a lot, cursing desperately. Humph, Wilcourt, you hypocritical wolf, this isn't over. However, at this time, the controlled Chonggong Xena looked coldly at Wilcourt and said coldly, Shido has told me that you guys conducted secret experiments on my body. I only have 10 years left at most. You knew. Hearing this, Wilcourt's expression changed drastically. Chonggong Xena's piercing cold gaze made his heart tremble. He said in a trembling voice, You knew. There's no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. You think you can deceive everyone. Can you not be so ridiculous? Dustless looked at Wilcourt with pity. He couldn't be bothered to argue with this homeless dog. Coterie, I'll leave him to you. No matter what, he must die in the end. I'll definitely let him die, but not now. Coterie nodded. She then looked at Shido, who was beaten to death by Wilcourt, and said in a low voice, Killing him directly is too easy for this guy. I'll repay you for everything you did to Shido. In your dreams. Without a second thought, Westcott turned around and ran for his life. What a joke, he had just beaten Shido to death. What if he was tortured by Kotori Itsuka? He can still run so fast with a crippled leg. In the face of death, a person's potential is indeed stimulated. Dustless had just crippled one of Wilcourt's legs, but this guy was running for his life like a tiger, as if nothing had happened to him. Then I'll have to cripple your other leg. Dustless's eyes were cold. He suddenly raised his right hand and activated the glint fruit ability. A dazzling light gathered in front of his hand and aimed at the limping Wilcourt. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a light flick of his finger, the dazzling light shot out in a straight line like a rocket. Poochie! Weiscourt's other leg was instantly pierced through, leaving behind a bloody hole. It was too horrible to look at. Moreover, due to the incomparably blazing speed of light, the bloody hole was instantly charred. Plop! Westcott was heavily injured, and fell to the ground in a sorry state. He looked at Coterie, who was slowly walking over, with a face full of fear. He had just beaten Shido to death, and this brother complex definitely wouldn't let him go. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Dustless was expressionless. He shook his head at the regretful Wilcourt. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have done it in the first place. He still had to pay back the debt he owed. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 300 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2167. Everything came to an end with AST's surrender and Wilcourt's defeat. Dustless knew that his journey in this world had come to an end. Although they did not see Wilcourt's body, since this guy killed Itsuka Shido and tortured him to death, he must have a miserable ending if he was handed over to Itsuka Kotori. After all, Itsuka Kotori was a brother complex. Just as Dustless was planning when to leave, an unexpected person suddenly visited him, Meijo the Temptress. Miss Meijo the Temptress, just tell me what you want. In Itsuka Kotori's house, Dustless changed his usual teasing and poured a cup of hot tea for Meijo the Temptress. Of course, this was just for show. He knew that Meijo the Temptress hated men. Even talking to Dustless would be an insult, let alone drinking his tea. Dustless also knew that Meijo the Temptress was not a bad person. She was just an innocent little girl. It could only be said that the trauma she suffered in the past had left a shadow in her heart. However, the scene that happened next was truly beyond Dustless's expectations. Gulp gulp. Meijo the Temptress drank the tea Dustless served without saying a word. She poured herself another cup of hot tea and drank it very quickly. It seemed that she was very thirsty. Miss Meijo the Temptress, you didn't come to me to drink tea, did you? Wuchen asked strangely. In fact, he was going to leave soon. If he could resolve the grievances, he would resolve them. He didn't expect to lure Xiao Meijo to leave this world with him. After all, he had cheated her before. Now, Wuchen felt embarrassed when he thought about it. Are you leaving? Meijo the Temptress suddenly looked at Dustless nervously and asked very seriously, where are you going? Is it far? Hearing this, Dustless was silent for a moment. In the end, he looked at Temptress Meijo like an idiot. His speechless gaze was clearly asking Temptress Meijo, does this have anything to do with you? However, out of politeness, Dustless still said seriously, of course it's very far, but how did you know? I should have only told Xiang and the others about this. Of course it was Tobi Origami and Tobi Xiang who told me. Temptress Meijo said without hesitation, they are my very good friends. Origami Kite. Dustless frowned deeply. Only then did he remember that Night Beauty Jo was a Yuri lover, and in the original work, she was very interested in origami. None of your business. Suddenly thinking that Xiao Meijo might want to steal the girls, Dustless's attitude changed drastically. He snorted and said, I have nothing to say about this. Don't meddle in other people's business. You bastard. Temptress Meijo's mouth twitched. She secretly cursed Dustless bastard. Was she so annoying? Please pay attention to your attitude a little bit. Humph, Wuchen just snorted coldly with an unapproachable expression. He said coldly, I can tell you very responsibly that they are all mine. Since you dare to steal my girls, you are really overestimating yourself. If not for the fact that I know you don't hate me, I would have slapped you to death. Also, I am going to a very far place, and I will not come back with them for the rest of my life. This is our farewell. You bastard, you have no right to decide other people's future. Hearing this, Temptress Meijo suddenly became angry. She liked Yuichi Origami and the others very much, and so did the other elves. It was just because Dustless, this third wheel, was here that everything became so disharmonious. Whether I have the right to decide or not is not up to you. You have no right to talk nonsense. Besides, have you forgotten who you are? Hurry up and call me master. Dustless said disapprovingly. Itsuka Kotori and the others wanted to leave with him, how could Temptress Meijo stop them? You. Don't push it. Temptress Meijo's face was red, and she was extremely miserable. Every time she communicated with Dustless, she would be angered by him. Besides, even if I don't have the right to decide, do you have the right to? Dustless retorted. After a moment of silence, Temptress Meijo's expression changed. Finally, she gritted her teeth and asked, where are you going? I want to go too. No matter where it is, I will go. F***ck. Hearing this, Dustless could not help but curse. He was speechless and looked at Temptress Meijo as if he had seen a ghost. He could not help but ask himself, is Temptress Meijo crazy? She is crazy to be a lesbian. Is she not afraid that I will do something inappropriate to her? Dustless was in a dilemma. As the saying goes, a woman will dress up for her lover and die for her lover. Now, Temptress Meijo chose to dance with the wolf in order to be a lesbian. She was willing to be in the same boat with the person she hated the most. Dustless was really impressed, but he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Even so, Dustless was quite happy for Nightblade God 10 Fragrance and the others. All along, no matter what, seducing Night Meijo was sincere to them. Just this point alone was enough. Do you agree or not? Temptress Meijo looked at Dustless nervously. Her eyes were shining, and her pitiful eyes circled around Dustless. Even her eyes were wet, and her appearance of being on the verge of tears was really pitiful. It was as if she was threatening Dustless that she would cry as long as he rejected her. This girl seems to be serious. It doesn't look like she is pretending. Dustless frowned. He could see the true meaning of Temptress Meijo's eyes. He could not help but curse, the world has really changed. What are you muttering about? Seeing Dustless's face twitching wildly, Temptress Meijo saw it clearly. She thought that Dustless refused. Finally, she made up her mind and did something that Dustless did not expect. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2168. Temptress Meijo's small white hand slowly reached for the buttons of her dress and skillfully unbuttoned them. Then the gifts on her body fell off in the blink of an eye. Her dazzling body was clearly exposed under Dustless's eyelids. Compared with this flawless and perfect body, the bright lights in the bedroom were overshadowed. Even though Dustless was a veteran in the field of flowers and an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, his eyes could not help but stagnate. You take off your clothes without saying anything. Wu Qin was stunned for a moment before these words came out of his mouth. Immediately, he looked at the Temptress Meijo in an extremely speechless manner. He could not help but ask, is there any relationship between you taking off your clothes and me bringing you away? Are you still a man? Unexpectedly, Temptress Meijo ignored Dustless's question and said resentfully, I'm not even wearing clothes to cover my body. Do you still have the mood to care about other problems? Can you get hard? After saying that, Temptress Meijo looked at Dustless's most important part as a man. Can't you do it? No wonder that group of beautiful girls are still virgins. Hearing this, Dustless's face suddenly turned green. In these decades, he was finally angered once. You bastard, pay attention to your words. If you dare to talk nonsense again, I won't be polite to you. Dustless was very depressed. The group of girls that Temptress Meijo was talking about was naturally Yedao Shinshirxiang and the others. Every one of them is fine. They are all virgins. It can only mean that I keep my body as pure as jade. Dustless looked at Temptress Meijo seriously and said. You keep your body as pure as jade. Temptress Meijo's forehead darkened, and then countless crows flew past. Dustless was surrounded by beauties. There were countless beauties of different sizes. This guy actually shamelessly said that he kept his body as pure as jade. He was simply too shameless. Let me see how thick your skin is. Temptress Meijo seemed to be really angered by Dustless. Her white hand suddenly grabbed Dustless's cheek. This bastard's skin is so delicate. How can I endure this? After touching it, Tempting Beauty Joe was surprised to find that Dustless's skin was extremely elastic. It was very delicate and smooth like silk. If this guy wasn't surrounded by beauties, he could really be connected to pure ice and pure jade. Blinking her eyes, she tempted Xiao Meijo to think so. Take your hand away. How dare you offend me? I am your master. Who gave you the confidence? Dustless's face darkened and he unceremoniously slapped away Xiao Meizhou's little hand. At this moment, if Meizhou looked carefully, she would be able to see the awkwardness and unnaturalness in the depths of Dustless's eyes. Meizhou was so close to Dustless, and her clothes didn't cover her body. If not for his good mentality and ability to suppress his emotions, Meizhou might have already begun to wail at this moment. Quickly put on your clothes for me. Gently biting his gums, the pain made Dustless restore his previous calmness. He looked at Meizhou's eyes and said slowly, answer my question. What does taking you away from this world have to do with you taking off your clothes? Stupid, there must be. Meizhou curled her lips in disdain and said righteously, you slept with me, so I am yours. Then, you took me away. Isn't this natural? Hearing this, Dustless's face trembled a few times. After a moment of silence, he finally sighed and said, this valiant reason, really makes me speechless. If these words were said by a man, Wuchen could still accept it. However, after being seduced by Xiao Meizhou, everything changed. He was speechless. In that case, I won't hide it anymore. You can understand what I mean by leaving. I will never appear in this world again. Are you sure you want to go with me? Dustless looked at Meizhou and asked. Of course. Meizhou was surprised by Dustless's answer at first. Then, she nodded seriously. Her resolute tone didn't seem like she was hot-headed. Then do as you wish. It's fine as long as you don't regret it. Dustless nodded slightly and immediately said in an indifferent tone, but I'll say the ugly words first. Even if you cry and scream in the future, I won't take you back. Don't treat me like a child. Night Tempter Meizhou snorted disdainfully, and then suddenly became excited, as if she had found a fun toy. Those who have been conquered by me are no challenge at all. For those who go against me, such as you, making you heretics kneel at my feet is the greatest interest in life. Your taste is really unique. But then again, I can understand. Challenging things can often arouse a person's interest, but you are a heretic. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Meizhou's strange idea really refreshed his understanding. However, Wuchen did not blame seducing Night Beauty Zhou. When he was young, he was also like seducing Night Beauty Zhou. He always liked challenging things. After all, everyone had a time when they were young and frivolous. They liked to constantly surpass themselves. Dustless, Kuan. At the same time, Murasame Rain's voice suddenly sounded. She looked at the naked Meizhou and couldn't help but daydream. Don't get me wrong. I'm just teaching a self-righteous girl a lesson. Seeing Murasame Rain shook her head, Dustless quickly explained. It would be a tragedy if he was mistaken as a pervert. Don't worry, I understand. Murasame Rain smiled slightly and winked at Dustless. I know you like flowers in the storm. Those flowers in the greenhouse can't withstand your destruction. You don't know shit. Looking at Murasame Rain with gloomy eyes, Dustless couldn't wait to kick her twice. This girl was obviously deliberately adding fuel to the fire, but he was too lazy to entangle with this kind of trivial matter. He asked bluntly, have you finished the things that should be done? It has been completed. Shido has been buried. The problems that should be dealt with have been dealt with. We can leave probably tomorrow. Murasame Rain also showed a trace of expectation in her words. The earth was so big. It seemed that it was still the same. If possible, everyone wanted to explore a more vast world. After all, curiosity was human nature. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2169. What the hell is going on? What happened to you guys? Murasame Rain looked at Temptress Majo strangely. It was not that she was suspicious, but at the moment, Temptress Majo's face was really strange, sometimes blue and sometimes white, looking at Dustless angrily, as if she had suffered a lot of anger. This guy is simply too shameless. Temptress Majo snorted coldly, and immediately told Murasame Rain all the previous causes, gnashing her teeth and accusing Dustless's crimes. You mean, Dustless said that he is pure and chaste. After a while, Murasame Rain looked at Dustless as if she had seen a ghost, as if she had discovered a new continent. What's with your eyes? Dustless's old face was slightly red, looking at Murasame Rain angrily, and scolded angrily, isn't it? Have I done anything out of line? This is not true, but, Murasame Rain finally saw the realm of shamelessness. Dustless sealed the power of Itsuka Kotori and Yato Toho and others, and the way was to kiss. However, this bastard said that he was pure and chaste, which was simply too shameless. I know what you are thinking. Dustless saw through Murasame Rain's mind at a glance, and said domineeringly, I sacrificed my body and kissed them, do you think it's for myself? Wrong. It was a big mistake, a big mistake. I'm doing this to save the world. Poochie. Hearing this, Murasame Rain just drank the herbal tea, and all of it was spurted out. She looked at Dustless with amazement. What kind of strange experience did this guy have? He could be so shameless to such an invincible level. My ability to twist words and force logic has reached perfection. You can even make a dead person come back to life. Moving her mouth, Murasame Rain tried to refute Dustless, but she was speechless. She was depressed to find that even if Dustless was unreasonable, what he said was really right. Dustless sealed the elves, to some extent, he saved the world. After all, the elves often went berserk, and it might involve innocent people. The Eurasian air disaster decades ago took the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Forget it. Bickering with this guy is just asking for humiliation. Looking at Dustless with hidden bitterness, Murasame Ling Yin was relieved. She immediately frowned and looked at the seductress Dustless. The departure that Mr. Dustless said is to leave this world forever. Are you sure you want to follow him? Follow me. Dustless snorted in dissatisfaction and said awkwardly, this ambitious girl just wants to steal my woman. Puff, that's right. You have a rival in love. Murasame Ling Yin heard Dustless's ridicule, and instantly smiled like a blooming flower. She secretly gave a thumbs up to the seductress Dustless. She was sure that if other people dared to say this, they would have already been cut into pieces by Dustless, and there would not even be a corpse left. Of course, Tokichi Origami will leave with you. What's the point of me staying here alone? Seductress Majo said seriously, anyway, I'm sticking to you. Women really can't be looked at with ordinary eyes. Dustless looked at the seductress Majo with his hands on his waist, and his eyes were stern. Obviously, she was not joking. Dustless still clearly remembered that a few days ago, this girl who felt disgusted talking to men would show a look of disgust when she saw him. Now this huge change was really puzzling. In the morning of the next day, Itsuka Kotori and the others spent about the afternoon and finally prepared everything. Itsuka Kotori resigned from her original position. Anyway, all the elves had been taken away by Dustless. She didn't live up to her title as the commander, and the sudden death of Itsuka Shido was a big blow to her. It was good to leave this world and relax. Murasame Ling Yin was no exception. Since Itsuka Kotori resigned, she didn't need to continue to stay in this world. It was good to see other strange worlds. As for the rest of the girls, they didn't have any extra opinions. After all, they were all elves, and they didn't have any relatives. As long as they were with Dustless, they would be satisfied. The world inside the system was always so bright and beautiful. The mountains were clear and the water was clear, the sky was blue, and countless majestic mountain ranges rose from the ground. Ancient huge palaces were located among the mountains, and the pavilions were filled with a poetic and picturesque feeling. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a paradise. Looking down from the top of the mountain, the scenery of the whole world was in the eyes. It was beautiful. This time, Wuchen didn't leave in a hurry like before. Instead, he spent some time with his confidants. After all, it wasn't easy for them to meet each other. Separating from the vast expanse was unfair to everyone. Therefore, Wuchen stayed for about half a month. However, some people were born to be restless. This kind of peaceful life was fine for a short period of time, but after a long time, Dustless's body began to itch. It was boring to live in the system world forever. Ready? Ling Er looked at Dustless and said. Beside her, a dark hole was clearly visible. It was a space tunnel. As for what the world on the other side was, Dustless didn't know. Which world to land in was like drawing straws. It was all up to Dustless's luck. Phew. After taking a deep breath, Wuchen reluctantly looked at the dazzling female confidants behind him. The gentleness in his eyes gradually disappeared. He stepped into the space tunnel and embarked on the journey. This was a bright world. In the dense primitive jungle, rare beasts of unknown species could be seen from time to time. They just lazily crawled on the ground, enjoying the rare sun bath. However, this beautiful tranquility was soon broken by an ear-piercing scream. The migratory birds resting on the branches all spread their wings and flew high into the sky. There was no other reason. This ear-piercing scream was simply too frightening. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2170. Oh. Get lost, bastard, get lost. You pervert, beast, scum that exudes a demonic aura, I'm going to burn you into charcoal. The voice that was close to going berserk swept out like a hurricane, spreading through the entire primeval forest. The surrounding birds and beasts flapped their wings and flew away in fright. This furious voice seemed to be even more terrifying than a demon, but it was very crisp and pleasing to the ear, even if it was angry. Clearly, the owner of this voice was a young girl. F***ck, is there a need to be so unlucky? Why did I end up in such a desolate place after coming out of the space tunnel? Dustless rubbed his head. His bones were all broken after falling from a height of 10,000 meters. His entire body was falling apart, and his head was dizzy. The world was spinning, and he couldn't find his bearings. He looked around, and an endless primeval forest came into view. He didn't know which desolate place he had fallen into. Noisy, noisy, noisy. Noisy my ass. With all his bones broken, Dustless was in an extremely bad mood. If it weren't for the fact that the Ten-Tails had healed in an instant, he would have been smashed into meat paste. Damn it, you're just a mere beast. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm going to burn you into charcoal. The young girl with long fiery red hair said angrily. Her delicate, jade-like face was full of anger, and her eyes were filled with tears. Even the surrounding space became hot because of the young girl's anger. This guy, Dustless turned his head to look at the young girl, and suddenly felt that she looked familiar. He asked without hesitation, may I ask if you are Claire Lucho? After hesitating for a moment, Dustless finally asked. If this young girl was Claire, it also meant that this was a world where elves use swords to dance. You know me. The young girl was stunned for a moment, full of surprise and vigilance. Soon after, she said valiantly, don't think that I can spare your life just because you know my name. You pervert, you deserve to die 10,000 times for daring to look at me bathing. Pervert. Hearing this, Dustless wanted to cry but had no tears. Looking over, he saw a naked Claire soaking in the clear pool, clearly washing her body. Damn it, I didn't even get to see anything, and I'm being treated as a pervert. What a waste. Dustless cursed in his heart. If he really saw it, Dustless would accept being called a pervert. After all, he was lucky to see it. But sadly, Dustless had just fallen from the sky and hit his head hard. How could he have the time to check on Claire? His head was still dizzy. Since you said I'm a pervert, then I'll do what a pervert should do. Otherwise, wouldn't I have been scolded for nothing? Then wouldn't I be at a loss? Dustless's lips curled into an evil smile as he looked at Claire impudently. Even though she had used clothes to cover the important areas, Dustless's sharp eyes could still see the rest of her skin. Bastard, you perverted beast, close your eyes. Claire's pretty face was bright red as she looked at Dustless in anger. This bastard was too hateful. She didn't know where he came from, but he actually dared to peep at her so openly. Pervert, do you know what you're doing right now? Claire angrily rebuked with clothes and hands covering the important areas. I know, I'm just watching you bathe. You continue, I'll just watch. Dustless sat on the grass and observed the surrounding terrain as he spoke carelessly. Pfft. Hearing Dustless's words, Claire directly vomited blood. This bastard was simply unscrupulous. Peeping at someone bathing and saying it so openly, as if it was natural. Just how shameless was he? Brat. I have a task for you. Dustless looked around. This was clearly a primitive forest. If he wanted to leave, he could only rely on Claire. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. But when Dustless turned around, a sharp light attacked him. Paw! A vicious whip lashed Dustless's right shoulder. His clothes immediately burst open, and the sound was extremely muffled. If a normal person was lashed, their skin would definitely split open. And the instigator was the furious Claire. Look at me one more time, and I'll dig your eyes out. At the same time, Claire finished putting on her clothes and looked straight at Dustless. That whip just now was a lesson. Lesson? Dustless suspiciously glanced at Claire. Looking at his injured right shoulder, he said rather awkwardly, so you were teaching me a lesson. I thought you were tickling me. I was about to thank you, you. Claire stomped her feet, her eyes about to spit fire. She had never seen such an infuriating guy. Could his words not be so infuriating? I was attacking you, and you actually said I was tickling you. Preposterous, are you looking down on me? Little girl, I advise you to be tactful and not offend me. Dustless stared straight at Claire, only to see her whip suddenly covered in a layer of flames. You advise me to be tactful. Hearing this, Claire almost fainted from anger. What's wrong with this bastard? This bastard peeked at me bathing and dared to tell me to be tactful. Damn it. Is there a school nearby? And you're a student of that school. Take me there now. Dustless's tone was light but full of dignity. Who are you? An elf messenger. Do you think I'm an idiot? There's never been a male elf messenger. Claire looked at Dustless warily, her eyes full of disdain. It's not that you're an idiot, it's just that you're too inexperienced. Dustless looked at Claire very seriously. Who said there wasn't a male elf stone? The male lead, God Fengzhou, was a male elf. However, since Dustless had invaded this world, the so-called male lead was naturally doomed. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2171. Claire glared at him angrily. She didn't expect Dustless to be so hateful. Her chest was trembling with anger. Tisk, with your small body, you're waiting for me to peek at you. Disdain. Dustless curled his lips and snorted at Claire's cleavage. Although the girl was cute, her body was obviously like an airport runway. You bastard, say that again if you have the guts. Claire was really angry. Her hair was standing on end. This bastard peeked at her bathing. Not only did he not admit his mistake, but he even mocked her for her small breasts. This was unbearable. You're not tactful at all. Looking at the girl whose hair was standing on end, Dustless frowned slightly. You're such a beautiful girl. Why do you have to court death? You're too weak. Boom. 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 These words thoroughly infuriated Claire. She stared at Dustless, only to see her open her mouth and recite a few ancient, cryptic incantations. Soon after, a violent flame erupted from her body. The flame gathered and didn't disperse. Then, under Dustless's gaze, it gradually condensed into a large flaming cat. Scarlet, don't be merciful. Teach this bastard a good lesson. Let him understand the consequences of offending me. Claire couldn't take it anymore and finally summoned her contracted sprite. It was a dark red kitten that bared its fangs at Dustless, baring its fangs at him. Boom. 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 The big flaming cat named Scarlet was extraordinarily mighty. Its whole body was covered in flames, like a divine cat that controlled flames. The flames were under its control. Awoo! Awoo! Scarlet roared at Dustless. Its voice was muffled, fiercer than a tiger's, and its eyes emitted an ice-cold light. Perhaps Scarlet's aura was really powerful. The green leaves of the nearby trees withered in an instant and were burned into nothingness by the flames. So powerful. Dustless smiled and stood motionless, as if he had really been frightened. However, his eyes were strangely calm, and if one looked closely, one could even catch the undisguised contempt. However, Claire was currently in a fit of rage and completely ignored Dustless. The only voice in her heart was to beat this brat to vent her anger. In all her life, Claire had never felt so sullen. Dustless had actually looked down on her time and time again. Not only had he peeked at her bathing, but he had also called her fat breasts. This was simply a great humiliation. He should be burned to a crisp. Go, Scarlet. With a wave of his hand, the little red cat, which was wrapped in flames, roared crazily as it charged forward. Swish! Swish! Because Scarlet was too fast, all that could be seen was a straight beam of light, and his body turned into an afterimage. Hee hee, you're not moving. Silly boy, are you scared silly? This is the consequence of offending the elf envoy. You still dare to mock me. Humph, you reap what you sow. Thinking of Dustless's taunts, Claire was even more furious. He actually dared to mock her for being flat-chested. He was really tired of living. Claire's gaze was fixed on Dustless. She sincerely felt that this handsome face was too calm, like a pool of stagnant water, bottomless. At the same time, when Claire looked at Dustless, Dustless's closed eyes suddenly opened, revealing scarlet eyes. The scarlet magatama slowly rotated like a blood-red gem, dazzling. The moment she met Dustless's eyes, Claire felt uneasy from the bottom of her heart. Scarlet, is it? Sit down for me. Dustless ordered calmly. A strange ripple appeared in his eyes, and a majestic eye power was slightly activated. Ha ha ha, as if she had suddenly heard a funny joke, Claire held her stomach and laughed. She pointed at Dustless and laughed hysterically. Boy, are you crazy? That's my contracted elf. How dare you order him around? Ignorant. Claire's face was full of disdain. Scarlet had signed a contract with her, and Dustless actually wanted to order him around. Was it really because Scarlet was a pet cat? Did he think he could order him around just because he wanted to? Moreover, even if it was a pet cat, they were the type that strangers could not approach. You white, looking at Dustless, Claire was about to mock him, but when she saw the red creature in Dustless's arms, her words stopped abruptly. She was stunned on the spot. How is this possible? How can Scarlet be lying in your arms? Heavens! That's my contracted elf. Claire was stunned. Scarlet had a serene expression and was enjoying being hugged by Dustless. His expression was very infatuated, and he rubbed his furry head against Dustless's palm from time to time, enjoying Dustless's caress. It's just a cat. What's there to be proud of? Dustless glanced at Claire indifferently and said sarcastically, in front of my eye power, no matter what contract you have, this little guy is still my pet, right? Scarlet couldn't speak, so he could only nod flatteringly. Bastard, give me back my Scarlet. Claire suddenly screamed when she remembered Scarlet's importance. What a sharp voice. Miss, is there anything I can help you with? At this moment, an unexpected voice suddenly sounded. Dustless and Claire were both stunned. They rushed to the source of the voice at the same time, and a handsome young man appeared. The newcomer was quite handsome, about 16 or 17 years old. He wore a thick robe and looked at Claire curiously. Could this kid be Godfeng Zhao? What kind of wind blew this kid here? Is it the protagonist's halo? He really came at the wrong time. Dustless looked at this person in surprise, and this person's name suddenly popped up in his mind. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.